You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
You know, our focus is on this preseason. It's the next step. And, you know, sure, a lot of coaches will say it. You know, you can't really, focus on what happened the year before. You can't get too worried about what's coming down the road. But we all know there's a lot of, noise and a lot of hype around this team. And what we can't do is, let those distractions, grab our focus from what we need to do day in and day out. We know it's going to be a long season, but we got to have a great preseason. We got to have a physical preseason. We got to lay that foundation for what's going to come as we head throughout the season.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DPM Ravi, Lulla. And, I was talking earlier about my interview with Brandon Kinney. That's going to be featured in the Hale Varsity Yearbook for football in 2024. You can secure yours today by going to hurrdatsports.com. The Hale Varsity Football Yearbook features exclusive interviews like the one I talked about, position breakdowns, one-of-a-kind photos, and more, so you can get an inside look at the 2024 season. Go to hurrdatsports.com to order your copy today through August 11th.
Who's editing our deal?
Our yearbook or our
Yeah, I mean, we got to get 50 minutes down to something that's workable.
Here's the cool thing about the yearbook this year, which I don't know a lot of people know about. I hope I'm not spoiling anything, Sasha. So we're going to take some of the stuff and turn it into stories or Q&As. We're also going to have QR codes in the yearbook itself that you can scan those and watch the entire video.
That's pretty
on
cool.
YouTube, but it'll be a private channel, so you have to have the yearbook in order to get it. It's going to be, so if people want to see our entire almost hour conversation.
So that's unfortunate because the piece on legacies is going to be pretty sweet.
Oh yeah. 100%.
That was a really cool idea.
Yeah. And that's the theme of the whole yearbook is building a legacy and the different forms that takes. So it's going to be I think it's going to be a pretty great product, and I'm excited to have gotten to be a part of it. And as you heard, DB, him and I had a little conversation too. Went a little deep in some areas. I tried to protect him a little bit, but then Sasha threw him under the bus.
Sasha and Avery started with one more question. It turned into 3.
Yeah. See, I got you out in a half hour. It was them. That was their problem.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it.
In my defense, I wanted to tie the whole thing together, the whole legacy element of what we were doing. So I had to ask that one. Avery is the one that asked the tearjerker.
No, I understand. As we're waiting, we're going to grab Coach Rhule here in a second. We'll actually maybe get to go first. That's incredible.
Well, you first
preferential treatment.
I think so. I mean, you're his guy. I think that helps out a little bit here.
You think?
That can't hurt.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for it as he's over there suited and boot. Look, he's mad at me now. He's like, come on, man. He's already mad at me. You just got here and you're already mad at me?
Yes, Coach Rhule just asked where DB's sweatshirt is. Coach, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Hey, just say good morning. Can you just start with a simple good morning? Do you mind? I don't want to mess up your hair. Can you put on the headsets? Look, you look sharp.
I mean, there's no shame for DB. He saw Coach Rhule walk in the building, and he had a text sent off 30 seconds later to see if he was coming over.
I need it.
So there's zero shame in DB.
How you feeling? Pretty good.
I'm just so fired up to talk to the media for 8 hours. It's like my Super Bowl today.
So we're joking, right? One of the things I do think you do really, really well, a perceived negative doesn't. You have this ability to kind of spin it on the fly, right? This isn't fun. It's not. It's 8 hours, right? But you're going to find a way to maximize in this environment.
Well, this is the job, right? So not all of us love every part of the job. There's really 2 parts to this, though. It feels like something too close to this.
Yeah, see, I'm that guy too.
There's 2 parts to this. There's going to be the conversations about football, about the team, and I love that. I can talk football anytime, anywhere. I'm down at the Texas High School Coaches Association clinic this past weekend, and some couple guys like, Coach, you're always around. I'm sitting in clinics listening to people talk. I'm like, well, I like football. Then there's going to be where they take me in the back room and make me take 50 pictures and ask me what my favorite Halloween candy is. And Coach, that I can promise you, even putting a suit on this morning was like a labor of love. So,
Coach, what is your favorite Halloween? No, I'm just kidding. So I do appreciate. I do feel like we get a good glimpse into your personality, though, and I think that's what a lot of people. That's all they're kind of looking for out of these things. Obviously, it's not the part of the job you like the best, but it is, like you said, it is part of the job now. Like, this is a different time. DB was talking about how Coach Solich, back when he was head coach at Nebraska, he was kind of in that transition where for a long time you could just be a football coach. And now there's a whole lot more that goes along with it. And there's guys that are kind of football junkies that, don't tend to love days like these too much.
Well, my number one job is really to make Nebraska relevant nationally. My number one job is to infuse energy into the brand on a national level. So flying in a day early yesterday and getting, instead of leaving at 3, getting up here at, getting here by 2 to go do the Pat McAfee show. That has brought, I can't tell you how many people ever across the country that I go that say, oh, I saw you on McAfee, or I saw you on Bustin' with the Boys. So you have to take time to do those things. And you're doing them, just like I said to you guys last time, because you're trying to infuse national attention onto Nebraska. And you're doing that so that it doesn't replace winning.
Right.
When you win, it's like, hey, they win and they're cool. And so you're just trying to, be that team that, we want to bring energy without, I don't want to be a clown. I don't want to say things, I don't disrespect other people. I don't want to, talk in memes on social media, like, and mock people. I want to do things the old school way, but still bring a lot of energy.
So when you get a platform like this to kind of showcase the program, but the 3 that you picked, it's pretty buttoned up, tough, good representatives. What's the balance there? Are you kind of the face and let them kind of be the body, or how's that working? Because you got some fellas.
Yeah, this was the hardest year I've ever had to pick who to bring.
I would agree. And
I try to bring seniors, and really I could have picked 10 guys on defense. And so, but
I'm going to ask you about in a second.
The reason why I brought these 3 guys is you're talking about 3 guys who've graduated. You're talking about 94 starts. You're talking about 3 guys that could have gone on and played pro football, but made the decision to come back for another year. So, if anything, can I honor them that way? And like Tommy's not here, but we put out the Chasing 3, and it gets into a little bit of Tommy's life, right, and a little bit of Jamari's life. So I'm just trying on this broad spectrum, trying to give every person an opportunity, whether it's coming here, whether it's profiling them, doing something so that our fans get to know all of our older players, because these guys, they've kind of stood in the gap and they've been here through the tough times, and I want them to experience the good times.
One I want to ask you about, because of his particular affinity for you, and I watch you guys interact, and I think he's amazing. You've changed his body twice. He went from long, lean to putting on some muscle. Now he looks like he can plant a 4-eye or rush the passer. Jamari Butler has flourished being around you and close to you. He thinks the world of you. He's kind of overlooked. He led you guys in tackles for losses last year. He came out of nowhere. Right?
Yeah. The overlooked part, I don't know, because we don't overlook him. You know what I mean? So that might be more like as people talk about the team. But I think on our team, I don't know if there's more of a vocal leader. I don't know if there's more of a heartbeat of the team. The reality with Jamari is he's got another year if he wants it. So I'm not trying to kick him out the door. I'm not trying to bring him here like,
hey, bro, you guys pal around and joke around and exchange, sparring. And
Damon, once the guys kind of kill the bear in their brain, there's really 2 bears they got to kill, to quote Brett Haskell. They got to kill the bear. We're like, no, am I good? I don't think I'm good. Am I good? And all of a sudden one day they wake up and like, you know what? I'm pretty freaking good. That's one. And the other one's me. Like, oh, Coach Rhule. If I do that, I have staff members have to do it. Like Jamari walks right up to me. He's like, "What's up, Pop?" Smacks me on the back of my neck. So he doesn't have that fear, and that helps the team so much. So when the young guys see his ability, if he's not doing something right, I'm still a coach. I'm still going to handle it. But I respect him so much. He's a guy that when I first got here, he went in the portal. He's the only guy I went portal diving for. I was like, whoa. When I dove in that portal, I was like, nah, bro, you coming back with me. So,
Coach, I got to ask, you brought up Jamari out. You're not trying to kick him out the door anytime soon. But you also brought up, I think it was Joel Klatt with guys like Ty and Nash, where you're like, hey, you guys should probably go. And they came back anyway. How do you kind of balance that? Is it just a matter of like, hey, I'm going to tell you what I think is best for you, regardless of what that means for me?
Yeah, no, I'm going to tell them what's best. at the end of the day, if they think I'm not telling them what's best, they won't listen to me anyway. So I tell people what's best. I sat there with Garrett Nelson. I was like, Garrett, like, I'd love to have you back. I think we'd help you play better. But at your age, you probably should go. And, I know how tough of a decision that was for him. So I've told all of these guys, like Johnny Bullock. I mean, Johnny Bullock left, and then he sat there for like a week, and everyone kept saying to me, like, hey, man, he's thinking about coming back. Should you should reach out. I'm like, I'm not reaching out. Like, this is his life. This is his decision. It's the same thing in recruiting. Like, people sometimes will say to me, I can't believe we didn't get so-and-so. And I'm like, it's their lives. Like, if you just take that approach, in the end, people will gravitate towards you. Like, everyone's like, someone asked me last night, what'd you guys do to flip Dylan? When he said he was going to go to Georgia, we said, hey, good luck. And every time he was around, I said, what's up? How you been?
Do you remember what you told me about that?
I have not.
So he gets away. He's going to Georgia. And you said, hey, look, bro, like, we're going to wish him the best. I work with his uncle. We're going to have a great offensive line. I want him to have success at Georgia. We're going to go recruit Dayton, and I'm going to wish him the best. And it was just like, and I walked away from that. I'm like, you had a lot invested in that.
Yeah.
And you were just, it's because you just said it a minute ago. And I tell this to people that because of your personality, you have this ability to be able to walk away, but people still know you care. It's almost uncanny, right? It's like, wait a minute, I thought you don't you like me?
It was again, it's their decision, right? Whether it's a staff person leaving, whether it's a player leaving, whether it's a guy going to the NFL, it's their decision. And if I'm different the minute they leave, then I'm not who I said I was in recruiting. So to me, it's like, I mean, I got a text the other day. I mean, I got a text just yesterday. Chief Borders was at a Chris Stapleton concert. He was
that is wild.
He was complimenting me. He said, I see you losing a couple pounds on Twitter. I was like, just a couple, buddy, not very many. But my point is like, I was his coach. I coached him. So like, I have that relationship. I'll have that relationship with him forever. When it was his time to leave, he left. We get too emotional, make too much out of everything.
You
to
told me that.
Recruiting is only for me about the ones I really want. Do I get them? And when they're there, are they going to be successful? It's not the ones that get away. Sometimes guys say I'm going somewhere else and I'm relieved because as we've gone through the process, they're not the right fit for us. Sometimes guys leave and I'm like, oh man, but I told them to come here because I wanted to help them. So I want to help them in the next phase. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it just kind of makes sense to me in my brain and our building.
So, Coach, you mentioned, people get too emotional about stuff and how they can't quite, detach themselves from the results of the process. But at the same time, I see you as a very relational coach, and I have to imagine that gets emotional at times too. How do you kind of separate those two things between being emotionally invested in the guys that you recruit and that you care about, but not being so emotional that you can't detach yourself from their decisions?
Well, no, I mean, it doesn't mean I'm not disappointed. It doesn't mean I'm not hurt. Doesn't mean we all have emotion.
Yeah.
We need to live with emotion. But we can't get emotional. We can't have it override us.
It's a
like
t-shirt.
Have you watched Inside Out 2? Have you seen Inside Out 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On
We.
Have you seen it?
I have.
But I mean, like, it's like I try to tell guys all the time about anxiety. Like everybody has anxiety. Everyone's anxious. Is it disrupting your life? And so it's like, and the movie does that so well. I was like, man, this is the best movie I've ever seen. But anyway, it's the same thing with this. Like, yeah, I get emotional. Yeah, I get fiery. Yeah, I get upset. Yeah, I'm passionate. Yeah, I recruit people when they don't come. I'm like, man, but I don't allow that to rise to the next step where it affects my decisions. Like, he who angers you owns you. Like, so I'm going to just walk away from it. And as I told the team, my message to the team all the time is when you get adversity, don't just get through it, find a way to make it better. So if a great player says he doesn't want to come, go find someone else that's fits us better. And that just kind of cascades throughout the entire team. And I think when you lead that way, I'm trying to get our team to become an unemotional team. Like, how do you win these close games? Being very unemotional. Now, playing with great emotion and passion, but not like, we're up or down. People talk to me about something that happened in 2021. I'm like, oh, come on, man. Like, so like, and I get it. Like, and that's fun, right? That's fun. That's what drives shows and all within the locker room, within the building. Man, let's not be emotional. Let's just attack every single play every day and see what happens.
Yeah, as Micah would say to Zoe, ennui. Like, that's the favorite. That's the favorite.
So
character.
you're telling me I could have skipped 6 months of therapy by watching Inside Out 2?
There's no doubt, bro. I'm just telling you. it's like you're saying to yourself, like, man, they wrote this for the kids, but really it's for the parents. And I've watched 1 and 2, and I can't wait for Inside Out 6 because they'll be hitting about the 50-year-old range because I need some help figuring me out.
I appreciate your time, man. You enjoy you'll attack the day. I won't say enjoy the day.
Well, yeah, that's the point too, though. Like, and I just joked about, again, anytime I have a chance to talk Nebraska football and about our players, I'm proud to do it. But we've all got to be great at the things we hate. We've all got to be great at the things we don't like. And so if they ask me what kind of candy bar I like, I'm gonna
go get our roster limits to 120. Go do that.
That ain't happening, bro. SEC baseball changed that.
Can I just say I do appreciate you taking the time here, but I also, as a guy born and raised in Nebraska, I do appreciate how you're always talking about, hey, it's not just the football team, it's not just the university. I need to represent the state well. And I think that's why so many people connect with you. So just for me personally, as a guy born and raised here and who loves this place, thank you for doing that.
No, I appreciate that very much.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Is head coach Matt Rhule joining us here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Really appreciate his time. We got him first, so I don't know if that makes us best, but I do appreciate that for sure. With Coach Rhule there, and now I need to ask for a refund from my therapist since I could have just watched the movie.
Dude, it's incredible.
I did see the first one, and it was pretty great. So maybe I'll have to. I don't watch a lot of animated movies, but I might have to make an exception.
Yeah, do one for that one.
Since I got the Coach Rhule seal of approval, I might have to give it that one. But really appreciate the time he gave us there. There was a. We talked a lot about Jamari Butler yesterday and how, he's kind of Terrence Knighton talked about how he transformed his body. Another guy that we heard from on the radio was EJ Barthel in talking about running backs. And a name that he dropped in there that I was a little surprised by because we saw him working with the first unit and wide receivers in the spring was one of my favorite guys, Janiran Bonner.
Yeah.
Now back at fullback, although, is that, in your mind, when you see that, is that like kind of a technicality? You kind of expect him to line up everywhere? Okay.
Everywhere.
Because that's the guy I'm looking for a lot. I think he can be special.
Yeah, so he's a great pass catcher. Mm-hmm. He gives you the ability. Just imagine, right? You break the huddle, and you think you're in 12 personnel with Borkature, a running back, and Bonner. Those guys can line up anywhere.
Yeah.
You throw in Luke Lindenmeyer and Janarian Bonner. Like, they can line up anywhere. Mm-hmm. They can be inline. They can be hybrid. They can get to duo. You can run split zone. They can kick out. You can throw them the ball. He's a great route runner. He's a natural kind of mismatch for number threes.
Yeah.
Defensively.
For
so sure. He's just a headache. And I've said this before about Bonner. Because I'm like, hey, we're forgetting about this guy. We're forgetting about this guy.
I brought him up a ton last year.
He knows this offense as well as anybody.
Yeah.
So
he reminds me of Jaheim Bell.
Yeah.
That's the guy from South Carolina. He was at South Carolina with Coach Satt. He ended up going to Florida State. He was really good at Florida State last year. That's the guy I looked at when I was watching that South Carolina tape. And then I kind of look at Nebraska's roster. I was like, I think they've got that guy on their roster if they can figure out how to use him and how to get him the ball. And you know me, you're talking about these 12 personnels that aren't what they look like. You know what I hear there? I hear San Francisco 49ers, baby. That's what I hear. I hear the kind of, you got Juszczyk lining up wherever he wants. You got
right. That's guy's a weapon.
You got Kittle lining up wherever he wants. You got Debo and Ayuk as long as he's there still.
Just imagine this guy that puts together defenses.
That's a nightmare.
One of the things that I asked our guy upstairs is I always want personnel packages.
Yeah.
Hey, it's 10 in the game. Hey, it's 12 in the game. One back or two. Right, because that helps with pre-snap calls because it's not just a crapshoot.
Right. And, yeah.
I don't want to be in chopper when they have two tight ends. Right.
It's pattern recognition. Right. You're trying to recognize their personnel patterns with what your defense likely matches up with best.
So when guys like that break the huddle,
it doesn't give you much to go on.
Nope. But you need. So what do you do conversely? You have guys like Javen Wright
on the other side.
You have guys like Bullock. You have guys
Prince Will,
who can do multiple things within a defensive unit, right?
Gifford, I think, is kind of like that on that next level.
Yeah. Do I want a guy to be able to come out of the box and be able to get into the flats or get underneath a number two, or do I want to be a safety? And right? They showed us 10 personnel, but these guys are both wings now. They're tight slots. Could be a run.
Yeah.
Can they fit in the run game? Right?
Yeah.
Like you have to have guys that can do that.
Yeah, and I know when we talk about positionless football, we talk about it a lot on the offensive side of the ball with guys we're talking about, but you just brought up a great point there. We almost never hear it mentioned on the defensive side of the ball.
It totally matters. You want to be a guy that doesn't have to come off the field.
It matters even more, right? I mean, there's a reason that Draymond Green averages like 9 points a game, and he's been paid like 3 max contracts.
How many times do we talk about a pass rusher? Well, but I don't know, he's not very good against the run.
Yeah.
Or a guy that's good against these
can only use him on third downs.
Yeah, can't rush the passer.
Got to take him off on third and long.
Or, that's what makes people like Derwin James and Honey Badger and those positionless guys that you can't manipulate.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's tough.
The guys that can do both things well, whether it's run fit or cover, those are the guys that are super valuable. And I do think that's a place where.
Do you remember the story I told you about a player that I want to move for playing the long game?
Oh, yeah.
At the high school level?
Yeah.
So ideally, we start off with 3 run-heavy teams.
Mm-hmm.
So I want him to play early to get used to the physicality. He's really a hybrid safety.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I want him baptism by fire? Because later on in the year, when we start playing spread teams and we go like big nickel, and I still want to be able to stop the run and defend the pass, like I'm already thinking about how we don't have to change our defensive personnel look.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why I like guys. And listen, I don't know.
That's the whole backstory to that.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I like guys. And I don't know what this guy's going to be at the next level, but this is just kind of an example. Is like a Pierce Mooberry from Millard North, right? He's kind of, to me, a blank slate defensively. Like, yes, he plays safety right now, but he's 6'4", 210, maybe. That he's got a frame you could do almost anything you want with, right? And that's a guy where you're like, okay, if I remake his body, and again, he's just an example because of the frame, right? I don't know what he's going to be at Nebraska or whatever. But and he's a guy I'm familiar with because of Millard North, obviously. But if you look at that frame and you go, okay, do I want to turn him into like that jack spot? Do I want to bring him down and play linebacker? Do I want to leave him at safety and allow him to do some of those things? You see that in a lot of the guys they recruit, right? We're like, well, why are they recruiting 15 tight ends or whatever? It's like, because that body type, whether you leave him on offense or you put him on defense, whatever, is super versatile on a football field.
Yeah, 100%.
Give me a bunch of dudes that are 6'4", 220. We'll figure it out, right? And we'll go from there. And that's where we talk about them all the time. Kristen and Corey come in, where
you have to be on the same page. You're so right about that united front. We've talked about this forever. And I mean, listen, a little bit of a cheat code just because we kind of know the inner workings. But
sure,
when all those people work together and you get a frame or some numerical benchmark statistically, they're well versed in knowing what that potentially could be.
100%.
And then the choice is theirs.
Yeah. It's like, are you going to go do it?
Okay. He's hit these measurables. He's got this frame. We've seen this before. We can make him like this, or we can do this with him. Let's just see how much he grows.
Let's see how much he grows, and let's see how much he commits to the process we're giving him. Let's see how much he can just do what he's told.
I've said this all off season. Wait till you see Jamari Butler.
I can't wait, and I also can't wait to see Ernie Shavers. I know he hasn't been there that long, but
Vincent.
Oh, I always do Ernie. I always do the boxer.
Because he's potentially a knockout artist.
I always do the boxer.
Vincent Shavers Jr. is a dude.
I have a weird affinity for the heavy hitter Ernie Shavers. So we will be back from Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. 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 Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
The decision really that's important is my decision to come here and my decision to come here and be a part of this thing, not be a placeholder for another opportunity. That's just not my DNA. That's not how I work. So like, I'm really, really, really happy to be here. The people, my friends that are close with, they're like, how's it going? I'm like, dude, I'm having a blast running around out there, coaching these guys. I mean, half of these guys, the younger guys probably think I'm crazy, man, but like, I love football. I love competing. I love making players better. So whether I'm doing that in Nebraska, I'm doing that for the Buffalo Bills or the Houston Texans, or wherever else it's been, I invest as much as I can into those players and those people while I'm there. And then when the next thing comes, you do the same thing. So.
Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. What's up, DB?
What is going on?
Oh, just another super normal morning.
Just a day, just an ordinary day. Trying to get by.
We'll make it.
No, I'm fine. Listen, it's been there's been lots and lots and lots of tougher things.
So just
waste a little gas.
Just full disclosure, we're supposed to be out at the Pinnacle Bank Championship this morning. Apparently, a snow cone truck hit our generator.
I don't know. Listen.
That's what I'm currently being told.
They're a good corporate partner. We'll be a good media partner, man. Things happen.
They do. It's,
and gave me, at least logistically, gave me a chance to not have to guess where to park, because that needed a practice run. So if I'm a glass half full solutions kind of guy.
When we're back out there tomorrow, you know exactly where to go.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I always like to weigh risk reward. That's why I make decisions.
But so we're here. We're live. We apologize for the best of first segment. Shout out to Shano for having that ready for us.
Yeah, I got to see the city. I had not seen that side of where my old stomping grounds. I used to be your
your
reside in
spot.
Northwest Omaha.
I'm surprised you didn't take a little stop by Phoenix on the way in. Maybe get a little hot dogs and tots.
Well, they have really, really good smoked food sometimes.
They do. They have really solid food.
I used to knock off they're the ones that got me to start doing smoked chicken thighs.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I didn't start eating. I'm 50. I didn't start eating thighs until I was probably 47.
Really?
46 maybe. Yeah, it's a relatively new phenomenon for you.
I might have to check out the. I
love they're always good to me. Like they
it's a low-key spot. Good food.
Very good to me. And forever they had the best music selection.
Yeah, I think their jukebox broke. I think it hasn't been at least the last couple times.
I haven't been in there in a minute.
Yeah.
I have not been in there.
That's all right, though. We're here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We're doing all right. We're up and running. Got a good show for you here today. As I was in the commercial break there, I was getting a little lost in a fan graph about Mike Trout and his projected what his career might have been versus what it was or what it's turning into. Returning to a conversation we had a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and you're still on Lock, Stock Hall of Famer.
I mean,
he's no longer first ballot.
No.
I don't think.
I think if you just take if his career ended tomorrow, I think he's still a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I wouldn't probably fight you over
that. The accolades are better than the numbers.
1,000%.
But the accolades are so good, I don't think you can keep him out.
Remember, I went through this deep dive.
Yeah.
I was like, is Lamar Jackson Mike Trout?
Yeah.
Like, it makes more sense now that you look at the deep dive, right?
Yeah, it does.
It was a weird, and I had to do the whole roundabout thing, how my mind works, which is pretty much normal life. So, that's how I made a living in radio, is just making myself vulnerable by being a ding dong. But that's immediately what I thought of.
So the reason I was thinking injuries more than I was accolades versus numbers, like accolades versus accomplishments. So I'm thinking, okay, well, Lamar hasn't really been derailed by injuries, but I think you might end up looking at their careers very similarly.
Oh, 100%.
In the set, unless something changes for either one of them, right?
Yeah, lack of postseason success. Highly Lamar has some hardware.
Yeah, highly thought of
to not make deep playoff runs, but again, like we got into with the quarterback situation and, who makes what and who doesn't make what, who he's throwing to and whether he elevates guys in that way will always be a thing of discussion.
I do want to stick on Lamar here for a second because the NFL 100 came out yesterday, a couple days ago.
Yeah.
One Lamar Jackson was ranked ahead of Patrick Mahomes.
So if you think 4 from Mahomes is low?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
ridiculous.
It's criminal.
I don't even know what we're doing here.
Yeah, he's the best player in the NFL.
And it's not close.
He's the one guy outside of. Now this is going to sound funny and a total homer thing.
Okay.
But outside of, in my opinion, of TJ Watt, that changes his team's trajectory the most. Listen, TJ Watt has led the NFL in sacks throughout 4 years. So the only time he has not led the NFL in sacks, he was injured.
My only pushback would be just, I know pass rushers are incredibly valued, but just overall positional value.
Yeah, that's
my biggest pushback.
You can.
I get what you're saying. Like TJ Watt's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, if you want to poke holes in it, it would be a reach.
Yeah.
But on its surface, he is
on defense. He's certainly the closest.
He is the most valuable, and just his energy. When that guy plays, his team. I think that's what Pittsburgh's done at the quarterback spot.
Mm-hmm.
Lack thereof,
right.
And still manage to do what they do.
Yeah, still be at the very least competitive.
But
having themselves in the.
But hunt. Mahomes being 4,
it's a joke.
And if they're looking for, I don't know why people poke the bear. Leave Mahomes alone.
Yeah,
Just let him hope. Hopefully, he's not
just pray he gets complacent.
Yeah,
like that's your only hope.
You now you find something else to, and
not only is he 4, you put another quarterback ahead of him.
Yeah.
Like that's the if you like I don't agree, but if you're like, okay, maybe we put a pass rusher up there, maybe we get a little creative, we put an offensive, like maybe we're like, oh, Trent Williams, that's the best player in the league.
You can't
put another quarterback ahead of Mahomes.
You can't put 3 players ahead of him.
No, you can't. You got to know.
He's the most feared guy in the league that doesn't hit people.
I think he's the most feared guy in the league, period.
Yeah, he might be.
I mean, if you never feel worse in a football game.
Anytime he's on the field, he clearly gives your team the best chance to win.
Yes, and you never feel worse in a football game than when you give him the ball back with a chance to beat you.
I was shocked. I usually try not to pay those lists.
That's bonkers, though.
It is wild.
And especially you think you want to talk about lighting a fire? It's players. It's voted on by players. This isn't the NFL's fault. This is voted on by players. But you want to talk about lighting a fire? They put Tyreek Hill at 1.
So I know.
You think after Tyreek Hill leaves, Mahomes goes and wins the Super Bowl without him anyway?
I just have a hard time with receivers. It's like
they're hard to pin value on.
Well, it's like I said to you off air. Show me the hardware of those league award-winning receivers.
Yeah. I mean,
it's just not. It just doesn't happen a ton.
Only
you just take their prolific years. It just doesn't happen a ton.
The only guy that you can point to that you can say, hey, he's got all the hardware to match the numbers is Jerry Rice.
Yeah.
And he did it over 2 quarterbacks. Now, 2 incredible quarterbacks, don't get me wrong, but he did it over a couple quarterbacks, which kind of lends his case a little bit more. And then he goes and does it till age like 40 in Oakland, does it with Rich Gantt. Like he's the outlier.
Had a mini stint in Seattle.
Yeah, he's the outlier.
People forget. What you looking at?
What are you looking at?
You're just happy we're back here.
One of my favorite Jerry Rice stats is he leads the NFL history in receiving yards after 40. You know who's number 2?
No.
Tom Brady. That's how much more prolific he was late into his career. The next guy is a quarterback on a trick play. Like Jerry Rice is bonkers.
Yeah.
He's the outlier for wide receivers. But yeah, I tend to agree. Like, I don't know in whose mind you can just look at it and be like, yeah, Tyreek Hill's a better football player than Patrick Mahomes.
No, Tyreek Hill does. He compromises a ton of things, but not like Patrick.
I would compare it to, and you know how much I love Steph Curry. I would compare it to like a Steph Curry versus, say, like a Michael Jordan type, right? Where Steph Curry changes the gravity of the defense. He changes the gravity of the team, and he does things that nobody else can do. I'm not putting Steph Curry as the best of all time. I've got him higher than almost everybody else. I've got him in the top 10, easy. But Michael Jordan changes the entire trajectory of basketball. Like, that's what Patrick Mahomes versus Tyreek Hill is in my mind.
Yeah.
It doesn't even, I don't even know what they're doing here.
Yeah, I didn't have the hard numbers. I appreciate the amazing Daniel. The Steelers 69-33-2 with TJ Watt.
That's pretty good.
1-10 without.
That'll get it done. Coming up on the show today, we've got Bria Christopherson, Husker 24/7, Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News.
We saw Kevin on Saturday.
We did, and Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network. Maybe we'll get into some discussion about all these top 100. I know it's not her fault. I know she didn't make the rankings.
I got to talk to her about another quarterback that's flying under the radar.
Yeah?
Yeah, because his offensive line doesn't look very good, but probably need to start to have some talks about Jaden Daniels.
Ooh, interesting. We will get to all that and more coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Everything's just in line. Everyone has a job in the building. Everyone has a responsibility. As far as the support staff, the coaching staff, everyone in the building, the first priority is the players, right? So anything involving the players comes before anything that we do as coaches in our personal lives. Anything, the players come first. So we're going to rally around Teddy. He's he's battled his way back from other injuries, and just another roadblock in his path. But knowing him, my relationship with him, he's going to fight back. He's going to fight back. He's not going to give up, and that's just the type of kids we have on the team. There's a few guys like, Fedoni tore his ACL twice and came back and fought back. So we have a lot of guys who's been through adversity, and, they're tough guys and they fight back from those things. And as coaches and the support staff, it's just our job to support them.
Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla here at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. That was Terrence Knighton, who we heard from yesterday. We briefly heard from the head coach, Matt Rhule, just long enough to tell us that a couple season-ending injuries for Nebraska. One we saw on Saturday with Roger Gradney going down with the ACL, and then unfortunately Teddy Prohaska went down as well with another ACL, although to the other knee. And not that you don't feel bad for anybody that has a season-ending injury, but when a guy's kind of been through it like Teddy has, like that one, not even from a football standpoint, just from a feeling bad for that guy, to have to go through it again. Like it broke my heart a little bit for Teddy yesterday.
Oh yeah, and it was not good. Obviously on Monday mid morning. Because I mean, obviously, people share it, and you're waiting for confirmation all day, and then the news. Coach Rhule tries to do his best to quell it because it was getting kind of leaky on Monday, and it's just tough. It's hard. It's nothing I enjoy talking about on a multitude of levels. Number one, I know the family exceptionally well.
Yeah,
and just a guy that I've been able to get close to since. I mean, you're talking junior Skyhawks days. I mean, he was.
Yeah.
We're talking Pee Wee football here, and no mom, no dad, no grandpa, exceptionally well. Grandpa is a show contributor.
Oh yeah,
quite a bit. Yeah, and so just personally,
yeah,
it sucks because you kind of know the person, you know what he's been through on and off the field. It hasn't always been easy. Home's had its fair share of uphill battles, and so your heart breaks on that magnitude. Then a guy that's, and I've talked about this for, 20 years, almost 20 to the day, a guy that's been through rehab and what rehab can do to you emotionally if you don't understand remote versus near. It's a tough place to be. Psychologically, you have to take yourself to places that aren't normal to push through things, and you have to be able to sometimes do it with just a small group or by yourself. So that's hard.
I'll say it's lonely.
It's very, very difficult, and he's got time, man, but he's got some things, and he was in meetings yesterday, so I think that was good. I was curious just to see, because sometimes guys, they don't always handle it.
Yeah, sometimes
especially immediately.
Yeah, you kind of need a minute.
And coaches typically give grace.
Sure.
But I mean, you could just tell Coach Rhule, who wasn't even going to speak yesterday, like by his.
Yeah, but
it's hard for him to say.
Demeanor.
Yeah,
he seemed pretty broken up about it.
And another guy in Gradney who I told you when he was at our house, I don't know, came to visit. They were watching Caleb Hoop or something, and we talked about Gradney and how important football was to him.
Yeah.
Right? Like why was he drawn to Gradney? Right? He's like, listen, man, this guy, football for him is a way of life. Like he loves it, he sleeps it, he eats it. It's not like he said it's not a normal household situation. He said, I cheer for that guy. I said, all right, I cheer for that guy. It's just the way that he, just the home, like just his situation.
Yeah.
Right. Where, so I'm hoping, I'd like to get down. Gradney's a guy that I'd like to, personally, if I could, invest in, just because I think I do like his story. He got position moved early. He was a guy that I was intrigued by on the third level just because he was a runner hitter. And they moved him to linebacker early. Like, I mean, you're talking off season.
Yeah.
And so, just football development, I think just a lot of things went into that decision. Wasn't an indictment of his ability.
Yeah.
And so like, it's the downside of sports.
Yeah.
It is definitely the downside of sports. And that's why I'm all for folks maximizing in the moment. 'Cause it's like most things, man, tomorrow isn't promised to anybody.
Yeah.
And once you get thrown curveballs, you have to take yourself some places that maybe you aren't accustomed to, and even if you are, can you do it again? Like there's lots of dynamics, man. But I liked what Coach Knighton said, especially on the defensive side of the ball, because he sees those guys all the time, right? That D line goes against that O line,
yeah,
and they are two tightly knit units, man. So I mean, game respects game, right? And Teddy played a position of need too, so the gravity is that much. It's expedited.
Yeah,
right? You got some guys that got to come on down.
Without a doubt, and it puts a ton of importance from a football standpoint on Turner Corcoran now, who had been, has been working at the same spot as Teddy in the fall. Has been working with the one some. Coach Rhule mentioned yesterday that Gunnar Gatula, or I think it was Coach, might have been Knighton.
No, it was Rhule.
Yeah, Rhule mentioned yesterday that Gunnar Gatula was working with the one some as well.
Andrew Rogers, another 2 shout-outs in 4 days.
He was big on Gunnar, wasn't he?
Big.
Yeah.
And I told him, if he was right, beat your chest, because you're
about the only one.
He seemed like it through the media, he was the only one that was banging that drum early. And he could end up being right. And so good on AR-15. I'm gonna say that. I don't even care. Like, what are you gonna do?
It's no, it's a tough thing, and just from I don't know, obviously, Teddy, like you do, or the family, but you just, anytime a guy goes through, I felt the same thing for Thomas Fedoni when he was going through his injuries, and
he's another easy guy to cheer for.
Yeah, and it's it's one of those things where you kind of just like, there's a part of me that goes, if he decided he wasn't, up for it again, like, I wouldn't blame him at all. Like, he's been through a lot.
Yeah, I won't even, bro. That's not for. I don't even.
And that's not our decision, obviously. But I also just
it doesn't even cross my mind.
Honestly, it's one of the first things that crosses my mind. Like, because for me personally, like, if I had gone through it that many times, like, I could see myself in a spot being like, yeah, I don't know if I would want to keep doing that. You have to love. You mentioned with Roger Gradney, the way he loves football to an extreme degree. Like, you have to love something an inordinate amount to continue to, and that's honestly, when we were having a discussion a couple months ago about the mental toughness and the willingness to endure that it takes in football versus some other sports, like, that's the thing in football that, quite frankly, I wouldn't have had.
No.
Like, the ability to endure the physical just issues you have to go through in order to keep doing this thing. Just, you talk about risk reward. For me, that would not have been worth it.
Yeah. And it's just, and I say that, like, being able to take your mind places you normally wouldn't. And I remember, I tore my adductor. I tore it from the bone. I did it in the Arena League. And at that part of my career, I didn't have much to, there wasn't going to be another run in the pros or going overseas or anything like that. And I remember 2 things vividly. And part of it is why aside from some immaturities, why I struggled early and in my marriage, it was, I remember my trainer, I had gone to go get some second opinions, and they're like, there isn't a ton of literature. A couple guys that were thrown from horses. I got a goalie. I went to go see Dr. Heiser and Lincoln. Said there's no guarantees, right? Like, this is rare. And I went back to my trainer here, who's worked at the Olympic facility, and he said, "So what are they saying?" And they're saying, I'm not going to run again. I said, "Well, what do you think about that?" I'm like, I'm going to run again. I said, "Well, let's get to work." And just hunkering down. And I remember I would go to the facility with Jay Noddle. We were training at this place, and I just, the places that I had to, like, take my mind to, because you're talking about, I ripped up my hamstring in Carolina. It's just a lot, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a me story, except to say that the places that you have to be able to go emotionally for the carrot at the end is dangerous.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous place. And I think from a competitive standpoint, I wouldn't even feel comfortable broaching that with Teddy, because if somebody's capable of going there again, for the risk reward, I tip my cap.
Yeah,
so
that's kind of what I meant.
I stand back. It's not my place. I would cheer my brains out, because you do have to be able to summon. It's going to hurt.
Yeah,
it's going to take time.
Yeah, it is, and it's you certainly wish Teddy the best, Roger Gradney as well. We've got Bria Christopherson coming up next year on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Here is Husker 24/7 senior writer, Bria Christopherson.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit of a circus act.
Bria Christopherson.
Oh, I mean, that's pretty interesting.
Bria Christopherson.
I kind of enjoy that.
Here is Bria Christopherson.
I mean, really just where we left off in the spring. I mean, the summer we was just doing a lot of conditioning, OTAs and everything, lifting and everything like that, everything else like that. But to be honest, we just picking up where we left off in the spring. We left off spring on a really good note football-wise with the pads clicking, everything like that. So when it came to day one of fall camp, we just rolled off on that standard. I mean, summer was there for us to to get stronger, faster, and in shape. You know what I mean? Learn the schematics and the mental side of football. And right now, he's just putting it all together. So, like, yeah, as I said, we're just picking off a spring. That's all.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're joined now by Bria Christopherson of Husker 24/7. BC, what's going on, man?
Oh, it's good. We got camp here. I'm happy. So things are going well. How about you guys?
B Sizzle. Full disclosure, I jinxed it. I said we went over the schedules yesterday, and I go, shoot, is it just me or every time we talk to BC, his Twins are on a winning streak, like some gaudy deal? And they were up to 5 yesterday. It finally came to an end, man. But you have to be pleasantly surprised still. I know you're waiting for the other shoe to drop now that Buxton ran into another non-moving object, but they keep winning.
Yeah, they might get it done. We'll see. I mean, Kansas City, I got to give them their due. They're a legit ball club. I kind of thought by now it would be shown that they weren't ready for this, but I think maybe they are. Red Sox are right there creeping. So someone's going to get left out. It's going to be that one of those teams that's going to have like a 6-game losing streak at one point here in the last month and a half or whatever, and they'll be the odd man out. But right now we're not in a bad spot. I agree. I'll be optimistic for a change. That's fine.
Yeah, and I think the Astros may have peaked. I think.
I think it took them a lot to run down.
Get back in it.
Yeah.
But we'll see. It's like the Braves. I hate to count
if it makes you
championship DNA out.
If it makes you feel any better, BC, the Red Sox are definitely going to be the team that has the 6-game losing.
Nah, he's been saying that, and they haven't gone anywhere. They've been steady Eddie.
They're not going to make it. I promise.
Okay, I'm just gonna pretend that
he said that last week, and all they did was rip off 3 in a row. Like, I mean, they're not listening to pessimistic Red Sox fans.
That's how I know the 6 in a row losing streak is coming, because they just won 3 in a row. BC, let's get into Nebraska a little bit here. Obviously, the injury news kind of dominated the press conference yesterday, despite it only being kind of a 2-minute snippet there. Just your initial thoughts on what we kind of considered to be a fairly deep offensive line group. How do you feel about that this morning versus last week?
First off, my initial thoughts are pain for Teddy.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a young guy who's really put in the grind, had his body in the best shape it had ever been in. He had really followed, I think, the Benhart method from last year with Corey Campbell and Kristen Coggan, where you just saw that, man, he looks lean. Let's see where this goes. And so I was starting to hear those murmurs on Monday that something had happened, and you're hoping the first things you hear aren't right, but it turned out to be so. So I feel terrible for him. I think this is the 3rd or 4th one now, and he's just battled to come back every time. Things were really going his way, and then you get this, and you don't even get to play some games. So that absolutely stinks. And then my second thought is it's that reminder, and we get it, unfortunately, about every fall camp at some point. There's like that stretch of a few days where just bad stuff sort of happens. Guys go down. It's football. You're reminded there's that cruel layer to the sport. And you're also reminded that sometimes you'll be talking in May or June or July about all this depth here and there, and one guy goes down, and that can really shift everything in a hurry. Like, I mean, we don't just say, oh, they don't have depth now, but you start to look at that particular position in a different light, and you're like, oh man, okay, now it's okay. Is Corcoran ready to go? Is he healthy? Like, how far has Gunnar Gatula progressed? What's up with Tyler Knack, by the way? I guess we haven't talked enough about him. So all these like other thoughts start to come into your head that previously seemed sort of on the back burner.
Hey, it's interesting listening to the MJ Sherman clip, because yesterday we got into this thing about development, and I was using Coach McGuire and Coach Dvorak as kind of the poster children for development at a position year over year. And how interesting is it, or do you think we realize that a couple of guys that transferred in where some negative talk started about whether it was Judy coming over from A&M or MJ Sherman, like what's taken so long, like maybe it's not another man's treasures or the trash treasure thing, where both those guys, or the two aforementioned, are two pretty good examples of guys that have kind of stayed with it, that could turn out to have the impact that we thought they could have had when they first came into the program.
Definitely. And the thing to remember too is, but in both cases, they had not played many college snaps actually.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, so last year was sort of their runway into that. I'm sure MJ, there were times when it looked like MJ might have, like if you get into the PFF snap counts and all that, it looked like it might take off more than it did. But it kind of settled, and I can't remember. He might have been in the 150, something like that. But that was more than he had at Georgia at any point by a ways. And so, yeah, he's one of those guys similar to Corcoran, actually. Different storylines, of course, because Corcoran had the injury, but where people kind of forgot about him. I think during the spring didn't talk much about him. But yet he's one of those veteran college football guys who still has a lot of motivation, still has gas in the tank, and I think is really important to this team. I mean, obviously Prince Will's there, and we're fired up about what he can be if he can stay healthy, but he's got to stay healthy. And MJ Sherman is really important, not just for depth, but I think to push Prince Will and be one of the main guys there. So it was good that he was up front yesterday, and I think people see he's a very focused individual who, he never thought about leaving, as he said at one point, this program. He's here and he wants to be a part of it. He wants to get it to be successful. So I think he's got good leadership qualities, and I would not forget about him. And then Elijah Judy, just going off what T. Knight says about him, it does really seem like he's in a really good headspace. I know he had a child, and that's obviously something last year you're dealing with while you're playing college football, and that's exciting now, and things are kind of going his way. And he played some good snaps for this team last year too, but now it's that next step, and I think he can definitely fit in. Not as a top 3 guy maybe yet, but he's like, maybe he's your 6th or 7th guy or 5th guy or whatever. But that you're going to need those guys to come in and not have that big drop off.
Yeah, he rotates in early. And the aforementioned, you mentioned Prince Will. It's funny, the dichotomy of the stories, right? We talk about Sherman and Judy, and I remember talking to Coach Rhule a ton, and he'd said, getting in elite level shape. Like they're big. They keep showing up. The hit your weight benchmarks and elite level fitness. Like that's a big thing. And conversely, we heard Coach Knighton on the opening day of press conference. The one thing that he said about Princewell was he did talk about his immense talent, but he talked about the consistency of doing it every day. Like keep showing up. And it's just interesting that how even for the talented guy or the guy that has yet to break through, the main thing these guys talk about is to bring it every single day, right?
Yep.
The only thing Coach Rhule wanted was a tough football team. So that meant fitness. What did everybody whine about in the OTAs? The conditioning and the fitness, right? Because it's easy to not get out of bed on some of those days, right? It's like it's just amazing whether it's a success story or a what's holding them back story. The story, the narrative is still the same.
Yeah, and football is such a tricky game because let's say you have one really great play that everybody's like, oh man, you see that TFL, and then there's an okay play, you did your job, but then you had a wreck on the third of play in the sequence.
Yeah, Ty Robinson, Norman, Oklahoma, a couple years ago.
Yeah, it takes everything, like that really bashes whatever you did on the first or second play in a lot of ways. Like you've got to level it out where, okay, maybe you do have that explosive play once every 4, but 2, 3, and 4 on that play chart are good. You did your job. Maybe you weren't you just did what you were supposed to do, and if you get that across the board, then you're a team that's really cooking. And it was interesting what you're talking about is, as you were saying that, I was thinking about John Butler the other day, and he was asked about Tommy Hill. And it was sort of a similar message of Tommy Hill can't just be satisfied that, okay, you've got draft stock now and you're, one of the better players at Nebraska. Don't fall into that trap. Like where it's like, okay, that I've gotten to this point, that's nice, and settle. Like you've got to keep pushing yourself. Like I'm always going to be consistent. And okay, what's next for me? Like I don't want to just be known as the guy who had a good EA Sports rating and then had an average season. I liked when he gave that answer about Tommy and just the push for consistency with him too, to be that guy. And then when you are that, you're one of the best players and everybody wants to follow you. That just comes with it then.
Ravi and I talk about Coach Butler all the time. And I said the analogy, and Ravi might be able to explain it better as he received the information. I said the thing about Coach Butler that I like, and it's no disrespect to Coop, because I liked Coop, especially the mentality that he brought and how he loves development. But I said the cool thing about Butler is he's coming in with a fresh set of eyes. So he doesn't have to, or he's not afforded the luxury, or he can't take into the account of if player X if he was a 4 and then now he's a 7, he can't say, oh man, he's come such a long way. Like I'm glad he's at this point. Or if a guy was an 8 and now he's playing like a 5, it's like, man, this guy just doesn't want it. Like what's going on with him? He can't get past the Coach Cooper thing. He only knows what he knows. So his baseline and the standard is the standard. Like I think that's good for everybody in the room.
Yeah, I would think so. And it was interesting how he kind of spoke on, it seemed like when he first got here, it's not like he was avoiding guys. I didn't get that idea. But he had a line where he's like, I kind of want to let the football do some of the talking, basically. I'm paraphrasing. But he wanted to wait to get out there, and he's getting to know those guys within the room a lot better right now. And I know there were conversations prior to camp, but he definitely wanted to go out there without, I think, any preconceived notions or anything. And like, let's see what you have. And it is a clean sheet for everybody. And of course, the fascinating part of that room is you've got these sort of categories. We've talked about it a lot, but you've got those 5 or 6 guys who have played a decent amount of college football, or a lot. And then you got a ton of, true freshmen, second-year guys who they just haven't played yet. And those guys I would think are, all elbows out. Like, all right, I'm kind of on an even playing field with this person just by my year in class, for one. And now I have a new coach. That's another thing. That should excite any competitor to have that in front of you.
BC, you're spot on, as Ravi can attest to. Like, maybe privy to information. You're spot on with, I'll get to know you guys as people later. Trust me on that. Like, I'll get into that. But early on, this has got to be about football, because I need to work quick from a teaching standpoint. Like, so your read on that, like he's actually said that to the players. So your read on that is 100% accurate.
Yeah, I was really impressed with him yesterday. It was 15 minutes where I don't mean this in a bad way, but I think there's a lot of coaches who could come in after they've had success for 10 years in the NFL, and there's a little bit of that sort of seeps out of them, if you know what I mean. Like, you kind of feel like that in the room, and there was none of that. It was just like really level, and I'm excited to be here right now. I did not come here for this to be a placeholder job. That's not the way I am. That's not the way I'm ever going to be. And I thought that was like one of the key lines in there from him. But just, as he talked through what you're speaking on, and he just had to put his head down every day. Like, he's over at Embassy Suites, and it's football right now. You walk over through the campus and you learn, and you don't think about, I got to know this or I got to know that by this point on August 15th. You just keep working every day. And then the next day you stack more on top of it. And he also said, I'm going to listen at first, and I'm listening and I'm keeping my mouth shut actually in the coach's room. And then when I feel like I know, I've caught up and I know my stuff basically, then maybe I interject with some of the ideas I've had through my years, and we talk to Tony about that. So I just think he's had a really good process as he talks the fans and the media through his process, and I thought that was really good.
Yeah, there's some reverence, man. You got a Parker, you have a Rossi, you have a Tony White, you have a Jim Knowles. Like, I mean, those are formidable coaches on the defensive side of the ball in the Big Ten Conference. The Tosh Lapoys, this isn't some little kid league, right? I mean, there are some quality fellas that are recognized nationally as peers.
Oh, no question. And I think there's a great respect for Tony in that community, and it especially got built up last year too for those who didn't have it yet. That this guy is for real. And if you hear any of the players talk about Tony's scheme and just being in it, there's just like this love in their eyes for it. Like, they do just have great affection for his defense. And even Coach Butler the other day, he's coaching about every defense there is, I'm sure. But you could tell there was a line or two where there was like, man, this scheme has just some interesting parts for a secondary coach to dabble with, and it's a lot of fun. And obviously, he said, I'm a little biased to the 5 DBs out there. We have almost half the defense, so that's good. But Tony's defense, I think, not only do players look at it and say, man, I want to be a part of that, I want to play in it, recruits look at it that way. But I think a coach, even a veteran coach of 3 decades, like John Butler said, in life, you've got to have those moments where you're like, I want to try something new and motivate myself by learning this that I haven't done before. And what's this all about? And that's really good for your mind and soul, as we all know, whether it's football or anything. So I think he's enjoying that part of it.
We're talking with Bria Christopherson from Husker 24/7. BC, we talked about the versatility. I think John Butler talked about the versatility of that 3-3-5 defense. You've heard it from some of the players as well. Have you allowed yourself to start thinking about some of the wrinkles that we might see this year? Because I think, and I don't know this for sure, but I think we got a pretty vanilla version of what Tony White's defense can be last year. Have you kind of allowed yourself to start wondering about what that could look like in year 2?
A little bit here and there. I think of it on the base level that my brain can think at. I think of like how often they talk about all off season, what's been like almost number one besides takeaways. It's been 4-man rush, really. It's like getting home with that rush. And when I hear them speak on, we got to do this, this is our pursuit, it makes me think of what all that opens up that you can do if you're successful with that on other downs. And then I hear something like, a question like, okay, Jamari Butler's up to 260 now, and Cam's Lenard's put on 10 pounds. Would you play those 2 guys on the field at the same time? And you get an answer from T. Knight about how maybe that can happen now on earlier downs. And like, because guys have changed their bodies, there might be certain players on the field at the same time, especially up front, that we didn't see out there actually last year, or that were in niche roles. So, maybe Jamari Butler, it's a game changer that he can be out there more on certain downs, or James Williams. All these guys have really worked hard to shift their bodies to be Big Ten ready. I think James Williams still has a little ways to go, as he's at 250 now, but he's definitely made progress. And if you keep stacking up guys like that who put in the work in the offseason, who make themselves versatile for all these different scenarios, or the fact that like Nash now at 310, they feel like they can move him around the D-line in different spots. I think that's what plays in my mind to your question, is just like how those chess pieces can go on different spots on the board than we probably saw a season ago.
God, it's so cool to hear you talk about it, because I was telling Ravi a story how, Caleb was saying, hey, the guys that maintain their weight and got to their weight goals in strength and conditioning, Kristen had over for, they got their favorite meals, and they submitted recipes and stuff. And I said, there's something to celebrating those small victories because it keeps young guys in the hunt. And he was quick to say, even the older guys too, and I dropped that in air quotes, when they start seeing the rewards in camp, like a Butler or a Cam Lenhart, who are now, what did I call them yesterday? Not two-way guys, every down guys.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's good for everybody else to see why those goals are important in the offseason, right? Why should Tommy Hill go from, 181 to 204, right? Like, what does that mean for your longevity and your stamina? When they start to see the practical application of it, of, let's say, your example of playing on early downs, see the next year during the offseason, and they have those little small victories, you're going to get more buy-in because they're rewarding exactly what they say they're going to reward. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, Jamari's a good example. He's kind of like what we're talking about with Tommy Hill. Like a young player in what you're saying could have looked at Jamari last season and said, man, I want to be like Jamari.
Yeah, that guy led us in Tiffles, right?
Yeah, you're right. You arrived to this point and all this stuff. And then you realize, you look at it like, oh, he didn't arrive. Like he made a step, and it was a really good one. But Jamari wasn't satisfied with it. He knows that he wasn't out there on these, certain plays, and he wants to be, and he's worked his body to get to that. So I think that has to fire up those young guys. Also, with the Teddy injury, Matt Rhule comes into the room, and it's a 2-minute thing, just giving us the news about it. But, Gunnar Gatula's name comes up as like a guy, like, you're on the clock, right? Like, I'm not saying he's like the guy right away, but he's up there now, and he's been kind of hanging on the fringe, and he's a pretty young player in this program. And if I'm any other young guy at any other spot, I look at a situation like that and I say, man, it does change quickly. All this talk I've heard all offseason about, oh, you need 100 some guys to get through this long season they're going to play. And what we're aiming for 16 games at some point. You all better be ready. That could probably just feel like talk at some point in May. And then you actually see a specific example, an unfortunate one, albeit, but one still that happens where an injury occurs and you lose a main guy, and you're like, okay, I do see how all of a sudden this trickles down, and suddenly this guy matters, who's very young in the program still. And that could be me too. And I would have to think that lights something under you.
That's Bria Christopherson, Husker 24/7 BC. We appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
That is our guy, Bria Christopherson, Husker 24/7. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Kevin Sjuts, our friend from 1011 News in Lincoln. We saw Kevin on Saturday at practice as well. We'll get his thoughts on how things are going for Nebraska in fall camp. Coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
The Big Ten is physical, you know what I mean? A lot of downhill running and stuff like that. So just being able to, build that callus and just get my body right and take care of it the best of my ability day in and day out. And just like the play style, I'm like, all right, it's big man football here. So just being able to adapt to that.
We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. We are joined now by Kevin Sjuts, our friend from 1011 News in Lincoln. What's up, Kevin?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Kevin, how are we? Were you a fire hose, drinking out of a fire hose guy, or were you savvy veteran, taking this all in guy on Saturday?
Pretty much fire hose guy. I think that
it's kind of a fire hose setup, isn't it?
There's a lot happening. There's a lot going on.
You would think over the years you would learn. You could try to be cool and calm like Dylan Raiola, but then you see too much and your head starts spinning. You're like, ooh, the receivers. Oh, man, Jamal Banks looks great. And then you start looking at the line like, oh, who's the 1, 2, 3 guys on the tackle? It's too much. I was overstimulated.
If you had it to do over again, because I would have changed my seating, where would you position yourself to best experience a night like that?
If you're giving me free reign of Memorial Stadium. Well, I mean, the one isn't possible. That's on the field. Two,
really?
I would
That's
say.
I feel like you would see the least on the field.
God, that's funny you say that. I wouldn't be there.
I need a little bird's eye view.
No, well, I was going to say my other option would be third floor, 50-yard line, about 2 rows up from those seats. I mean, that's, in my opinion, one of the best spots in the entire venue. But the reason I say on the field is because I want to be, shoulder to shoulder next to those guys, so I get a better sense of their size, better sense of their muscle, and be able to see how they move a little closer.
Yeah,
that's a great question. But for games, DB up there on the top, it's my favorite. Turn the lights on.
So you're outside on the concrete, right? I am terrified up there.
Oh, I love it.
I think it sucks, and you have great equipment, so you can see. We did a broadcast up there. I had to fill in for a radio deal, and I'm telling you, like I was 48, so I didn't almost wet my pants, but it was I was not comfortable, to say the least.
You get to take in Lincoln from up there.
Oh,
I mean, you get to see beyond the stadium. You see that it's like you just feel like where you're positioned, like you are just in the heart of the city of Lincoln and in Nebraska, and you just get to see and I don't know, the experience for me up there every time, despite the height, despite it's wonderful.
Are you guys
like I love
talking about being like outside on the roof?
It's the 7th floor.
Oh,
it's
hell
a
no!
photo
Not a
deck, Robbie.
chance. Not a chance.
Dude, it's
so
it's weird up there.
You couldn't pay me to get up there.
It's tough.
There's a rolling down metal thing that like goes up and down. When they're not playing, you bring it down. It latches almost like a shed door. And sometimes when we're the first ones there, I get the privilege of opening that thing up and rolling it up, and then all of a sudden, boom, Lincoln's just right on you. It's really cool. I should take a video of that and share it with our people sometime. Just it's neat. I cannot explain it. I'm not doing a great job of like describing what that experience is like and what you see, but you can see as far down as Vine as the horizon will take you, and you can see downtown, the Capitol, and then of course the football right in front of you.
A lot of people early on, and revisionist history will be interesting to see how this plays out depending on the career trajectory, but I didn't hear a lot of championing of Gunnar Gatula coming out of high school, right? I heard some hometown stuff. I heard, close proximity. Where else was he going to go? I heard a little bit of that. Does the Lincolnite in you, is there any I told you so? Is there wait and see? Is there I didn't see it this quick? Like, what do you think of when you hear Coach Rhule say, Gunnar Gatula's in the hunt, obviously with Turner Corcoran, and he gets name dropped like that unsolicited?
One, I'm very, very happy because, being a Lincoln guy that covered Gunnar in high school and knowing his father, who's the head coach at Lincoln Southeast, like I am just overjoyed at the decision he made collegiately to go play at Nebraska. And now that he's hanging with everybody there. And I'm not saying that I doubted him for a second. And I think Gunnar's a great guy. In fact, he gave me the best pancake recommendation in Lincoln. So I am forever indebted to him for that. It's the eatery, by the way.
That was my follow-up question is I need to know about the pancakes.
I mean, because you ask the best O-lineman in Lincoln where to go eat pancakes, and he's not going to lead you astray. So done the eatery, and it was fantastic. So I'm really happy for Gunnar. And then a little bit of me is surprised because in the spring, I remember talking to Donovan Raiola about him specifically. And Donnie, he said some positive things, but I maybe had some doubts that they were all in on Gunnar and his trajectory at that point in time. But this puts all that to rest. If it's coming out of the head man's mouth and he's being mentioned as a guy that's going to challenge for a number one spot, man, I'm really happy.
How much? Okay, I'm going to defend you here for a second. How much of that has to do with the fact that physically he looks night and day different than he did post spring? Like, he looks incredible. And I'll go as far as to say Ben Scott said in Indianapolis when he mentioned Gunnar Gatula, he said you can totally tell he's bought in when you look at his body. Like, so there obviously was, but see, I don't think that's it, because I think it's the strength in the snap now that he's I call it snap. I don't know the better term for it, but he's like got some oomph,
like the burst,
like when he puts his hands on you, right? Like your head pops a little bit.
Yeah, his explosion. And I mean, if you give somebody a year working with Corey Campbell, you expect some sort of
how are you going to be worse?
Yeah, right. But for him, and who knows? I bet nutrition is probably a part of it. Maybe less pancakes, more meat.
Yeah,
I don't know. But I think that's part of the buy-in, is that, you know, he's always been a guy that loves to work out. But I think that this has just taken him to another level in the weight room with nutrition, and so cool to see him at a young age being really in the mix here in fall camp.
Are you guys surprised that nutrition, it seems like it's so rudimentary, right? Like, just do what you're told, but like, people fight it. I think about like just normal human nature. Hey, wake up with X amount of protein, or hey, start your day with this. And we still don't do it. Like, should we be surprised that it takes young people a while to buy into nutrition?
I don't think we should be surprised one bit. You know, you put yourself in their shoes, 18 to 22 years old. Yeah, you want to go eat at Raising Cane's, and yeah, you want to hit up the candy shop every now and again.
And who's hungry after a workout?
Right. But, and I think the other thing beyond, you know, knowing the goals that you have for protein intake and carbs and all that stuff, the fact that they have the foods available to them pretty much at any time. And Kristen Coggin, the team's head nutritionist, she was even explaining to us that when they come in there and they have the opportunity to cook and have access to a lot of these foods, like, they let them make food to go, like, to put in the other containers. So, you know, for a guy like Gunner, if he's exhausted after a workout, doesn't want to eat right then, just wants to get home, he maybe already has his meal done in a, you know, microwavable container. Boom, pops it in, and now he's got, you know, X number of calories that he needs at some point in that day anyway.
Yeah, Kevin, you mentioned the Donovan Raiola thing, and I wonder if his reflection of maybe not seeming totally bought in on Gunner versus how they're talking about him now is kind of a direct reflection of how they felt about Gunner's buy-in from then until now. Does that kind of make sense?
That's an absolutely great point.
Yeah, that's defensive Kevin Sjuts. Yeah, I'm with you.
That's good. And maybe that was a conversation the coaching staff had with him after spring, and they challenged him. And, you know, he's had a tremendous summer, and so there's a number of ways to look at it. But Ravi, that's a really good point.
So, Kevin, let me get you out of here on this. Of the non-newcomers that you kind of see playing an integral role, who are you most interested in their play?
Non-newcomer, he's going to feel like a newcomer, but I'm going to hit you with Isaiah Garcia Castaneda because he's healthy now.
He's back.
He is. And I think some of it is we haven't seen the full IGC. You know, he's been riddled with injuries. If he's healthy right now, if he can stay healthy, I think he finds a way onto the field offensively, and he's going to play a role in special teams as well. That's my name for you guys, Isaiah Garcia Castaneda.
Hey, shout out to you, because you're the first person in 4 months that I've heard mention IGC that wasn't a coach named Coach Foley talking about special teams. So if you're right, you'll be the only one.
Love it. I'm a huge fan. Go IGC.
That's our guy, Kevin Sjuts, 1011 News in Lincoln. Kevin, we appreciate the time. We'll talk again soon.
You boys be well. Thank you.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Really, I just gotta bring the young guys along. That's all. Like, I remember being in a position like I was young, and shoot, it didn't happen so fast. I'm an old head now. You know what I'm saying? And so I just I go and watch film with the young guys at night. You know, tell them this, give them pointers, and, you know. But obviously, it come with reps, and sometimes they gotta learn themselves. You just can't really tell them what to do. But like, whenever they do mess up, I'll pull them to the sideline and be like, you should have did this, you should have did that. You know what I'm saying? Take an extra step or something like that. You know?
Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. And I have to remind you to get out to hurrdatsports.com to order your Hale Varsity Football Yearbook for 2024. Got tons of exclusive interviews, position breakdowns, one-of-a-kind photos, and so much more. Get your inside look at the 2024 season by going to hurrdatsports.com and ordering a copy. You have to order by August 11th. That is Sunday. Make sure you get your orders in, and those orders will be shipped out after all the pre-orders have been taken on August 11th. All that at hurrdatsports.com. DB, I wanted to return to something that you talked about with nutrition and why that's so hard, not just for players to buy into, right? So much harder than the workouts to buy into, but just the general public also. And I think it's because nutrition is the long game portion of the equation. Like, and this is somebody who like I lifted very seriously and I took my nutrition seriously, but that was the thing that took me the longest to figure out and to dial in. It's because you can't feel nutrition immediately, right? You feel the workout immediately. Whether you're stronger or not, you can feel the soreness. You can feel something happening with your body pretty quickly. Nutrition takes a long time to see the benefits of. And as people, we're not great at delayed gratification.
Yeah, I think that's part of it to some degree, because there are some things that I've done that I felt immediately.
Sure.
Like when I went all carnivore, I felt better immediately,
Sure.
like within the week.
Sure.
Right. Like just in general. But the couple of places I do agree are when you're looking for visible gains. That's why I tell people to stay off the scale. Right. Because things get shifted dramatically. You know, you have to understand fat versus muscle. You also can't be afraid of a number.
Yeah.
Right.
Or gaining weight or whatever, if it's recomped in the right way.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, because sometimes that's terrifying.
Yeah.
So
especially if you're used to being like, let's say you're Tommy Hill and you're like, hey, I'm a fast guy. I'm not a thumper. I'm a fast guy. I need to be sub 200, preferably sub 190. I want to stay fast. And they're like, hey, we want you to play at 205.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, I'm sorry, what?
Yep.
Like that could be scary if I'm Tommy Hill. I mean, like, no, my ticket to the NFL is being a 4.3 guy.
So I think with young people, it's different because it's more about, no, I've excelled at this,
Yeah.
so let's stay around here.
Yeah, let's stay where I know I'm comfortable.
What I think guys like us or older people is there are so many varying opinions.
Yeah, sure. And it's also like
different how to use sugar, how to use carbohydrates,
right.
how to use protein.
Well, like different things are going to react to people's bodies differently too, right? Like a carnivore diet works for you, would not work for me, right? Like there's a lot of like, hey, just because it didn't work for you doesn't mean it didn't work.
Yeah.
Or doesn't work. It just means like, hey, maybe that wasn't the right fit for you. And I think that's the amazing thing that they do down in Lincoln with Kristen is they figure out what is going to work for each and every single individual.
You know, I asked, and I'm a victim, not a victim. I'm a good example of what you're talking about, right? Because you think it would just be easy for me to listen. Because I'm the guy that says, just do what you're told. Just do what you're told. Now, the second time I saw Caleb, I'm like, can you still move?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I get it. You just want a couple of or whatever. But like, can you
still move around a little bit?
Dude, my lateral quickness is better than it's ever been. Thanks, Dad. Hey, sorry, man. Like, I'm just wondering, like,
yeah, because
I've never seen you carry 200 pounds.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm deathly afraid because I just remember, God,
because you tried to bulk up when you during your career too.
Yeah, and it was Operation Disaster.
Yeah.
I mean, other people thought it was good. I didn't feel good.
Yeah.
You know, and I went back the other way and I'm like, you know, this is kind of where I need to be. But I was not good at nutrition. And so, but I appreciate it now because groceries are expensive and it really matters. And I've seen the immediate dividends. And I just stress whether it's Donovan, who's already disciplined, or any of these young guys, right? I'm like, listen, it's free, it's accessible, and it's the right thing to do.
And it's just never going to be easier than it is right now.
Nope.
They've made it so easy for them.
You're right. Right. The deck scan doesn't lie. Just do what you're told.
Yeah. And trust. It's not just doing what you're told. It's trusting in the vision they have for you.
Yep.
Right. Because if you're Caleb and you're like, I don't have a huge frame.
If you're Danny Kalen, what does 20 some more pounds look like for you?
I mean, it looks like you look like a Division I quarterback instead of a high school kid.
But it's traumatizing at first.
It is, right? Like, because you're probably like,
it's daunting.
I was pretty good at before, right?
Yep.
If you're Caleb, you're like, I don't have a huge frame. I'm not a super tall guy. Can I carry?
Jamari Butler led the team in tiffles.
Yeah. He's like,
you want another 20?
He's like, I was pretty good last year. Cam Lenhart's a great example. He's like, I was pretty good last year. You want me to put more weight on? Or like Nash is a really great example too, going the other way. He's like, I mean, I've kind of lived my life at 335. Now, part of this is because I want to do the wrestling thing, but I bet he could have gotten back up to 330 if he wanted to.
Yeah.
And he's like, we're going to live at 310 now. Like I'm sure that wasn't done outside of the council of what
that's one of the things that, because for a couple years, this was right post COVID. And I said, Nebraska's O-line D-line, they're just too big.
Yeah.
There's too big. And that's when I went into that deep dive about O-line and D-lines in the Big Ten and average weight and this, that, and the other. And I think it's one of the first things that I thought of yesterday or Monday afternoon for Teddy.
I thought the same thing. I was like, man, 6'10" is really big to be asking.
My coach, we had our parents meeting last night. They're like, man, because they know the relationship. And I was like, man, if I'm falling to the ground at 6'10",
it feels different.
That's a long way to fall.
Yeah. Well, and there's just like,
right. Like I don't even want to get on a 7-foot ladder.
The levers are longer, right? Like there's more, when you're that size and you're trying to still bend in the ways that you need to be an offensive lineman, it's way different and way more taxing on his body at 6'10" than it is at like Justin Evans' body at 6'2" or whatever he is, right? Yeah. And so like that's one of the first things I thought of was like, man, like maybe his body just isn't meant for this as he kept growing, right?
And you saw him on Saturday, like he looked like a hooper.
Yeah. Well, because he's gotten lean, he looked like
he looked fantastic,
and so there's listen, there's a reason there's not a lot of 6'10" linemen. You don't see a lot of guys that are 6'10" playing that position because I do think there is just a physical, I don't know if limitation's the right word, but toll that gets when you get to a certain height. I mean, you don't even see a ton of guys at like 6'8", 6'9".
No.
Like there's a couple, and I mentioned, I think off air, Jacob Hood, it's a 6'8" guy, but he's got his own issues with some of his like lower
ankle
leg
dexterity.
Joints and stuff.
It's kind of arthritic, yeah.
But
people forget about Hood though.
It's really, really hard to be that big and to move like you need to.
He was one of the few guys, remember a spring ago, way back when, where you're like, who's this Jacob Hood guy?
Yeah, I think that's a guy that might play a factor now that again that Teddy's out for the season. But
how about Sjuts dropping IGC?
Man, that was it's funny that he mentioned that because and I'm not trying to take credit here, but there were a couple times on Saturday where I had to look up him and be like, oh, IGC, interesting.
Yeah.
Which I mean, it's good for Nebraska
just further of all the guys we talk about in the wide receiving room.
We never talk about him.
No one
very far down on the list
brings up IGC.
We bring up Banks and Nair with good reason.
Yeah.
We bring up Malachi and Jalen Lloyd since they played last year. We bring up Barney because we get excited about him as a true freshman.
Bonner.
We bring up Bonner because of his versatility, and
even though he'll move again, but
I mean, I think he's going to move all over. I don't really care about I mean, whatever his position says next to Bonner, I kind of take that with a grain of salt. They're going to put him wherever they feel like.
Yeah.
But we don't get to IGC.
I think with this staff in particular, we better get used to, because a lot of guys, fans, like they'll try to force guys down your throat, right? Oh, you don't say this about this guy. You don't talk about this guy. And it's usually for a good reason. But my general rule of thumb is all bets are off with these guys because it's about productivity and consistency. So once you get there, the walk-ons versus the 5-star versus the 3-star versus whatever doesn't really matter. This isn't the NFL where your certain amount of guys are commanding a certain amount of dollars, so you need it to pan out. It's not like that. So I'm not married to any particular guy based on
our perception of him coming in.
The fanfare, because I'm just not. Like I've learned that lesson for 20 years. So it's about availability and consistency.
Well, what did Knighton say yesterday, right? What's the best way to get on the field? Know what you're doing and play hard.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't hear him mention talent once.
Yeah.
Know what you're doing and play hard.
the longer I'm in it, the more important it is.
If they didn't have a certain level of talent or belief in the talent that you have there, guess what?
You're
Wouldn't
probably
be here.
not there.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't be here.
So you need the other stuff.
Yeah. Coming up next, we've got Cynthia Freeland talk a little NFL here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla. We're also on KFOR in Lincoln for this third hour. And I got to remind you, just a couple weeks away from our very first breakfast, our live breakfast here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, brought to you by EP Foundation Repair. They are going to be sponsoring all 4 of our live breakfasts this year. But first one before the UTEP game, got to kick the season off right. Go to eventbrite.com to get tickets. You can get a variety of breakfast items here at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, and maybe get your Friday started off with a little morning cocktail as well. Those will be available as well. So make sure you get to eventbrite.com, search for Hurrdat Sports Radio to get your tickets. We are,
regardless of the company we keep, you're going to get good food.
Oh, 100%. We are efforting Cynthia Freeland to talk some NFL here. But DB, I wanted to ask you a question because you mentioned Jaden Daniels earlier in the show, a guy that you seem like you might be a little high on.
And now remember, full disclosure, love the talent, didn't like his size.
Yeah, the frame I'm concerned about. There's a little,
and he's still a little guy.
There's a little RG3 there that I'm concerned about. Not to give Washington fans any PTSD or anything.
Well, I'm sure they're thinking of it. They saw RG3's first season when he was
incredible,
unbelievable, and took the world by storm.
Incredible.
And then who got him? Was it Haloti? It was Nada?
I think it was Haloti Nada, who's not a small guy.
And they're going to start a rookie at tackle.
Yeah.
This year. So I hope, I'm a big Biotic guy, so I hope he plays well for the Commanders after leaving Dallas. I like him primarily because he was so good at Big Ten Media Days.
Yeah.
When we had him a handful of years ago. So, which, by the way, gosh, I'm old.
Why?
It's incredible. It was forever ago.
I am old.
But these guys are gushing over Daniels.
Yeah. So here's my question, though. So you've got Daniels.
They did sack Hal 69 times last year, though.
Right. You've got Daniels on the one side who they've already named the starter, and they're planning to play him in preseason games. You got Caleb Williams on the other side who didn't even suit up for his preseason game. What do you think about rookie quarterbacks and preseason? Because my initial thought is just kind of like, hey, these guys haven't done anything. They haven't experienced this yet. Any reps you can get them in game action is a positive. But on the other side, I kind of understand trying to protect your investment. I don't know how I would feel if I'm the Bears and I'm trying to throw Caleb Williams out there.
Caleb Williams needs to play.
He needs to get some reps, right?
That is my opinion.
He
needs to be playing in preseason.
I really struggle with okay, you're a veteran. You've been doing this for a handful of years, whatever. Skip the preseason, maybe play in one game. I get it. But for these rookie guys, I'm just having a real hard time feeling like it's a good idea, or even you're putting them in a good position to succeed.
Doesn't seem like it, especially when you have so many new offensive pieces.
Yeah, you're kind of starting not from scratch, but you're starting over on offense.
You got good weapons.
And I get they're practicing together, right? But it's different.
Yeah. I don't know. What do we know about Waldron as an OC with Caleb Williams?
Nothing.
So I would want to see it, but again, man, I just part of it is just my personality. Nobody was above reproach.
Yeah.
Everybody, I told you I was traumatized. I ran out of bounds early in college in practice, and they played it 15 times, and it's you don't make enough to be running out of bounds. So I think like that.
Yeah.
Just that level of embarrassment, his play. Our good players in high school, they practice hard. They don't sit out. If you can practice, you practice, and you get reps. Right?
So you don't get you didn't get the Deion Sanders special treatment.
I still can't believe
Nobody
that he
hits
said
Travis
that.
Hunter.
If I'm Hunter, I don't even want to be that guy.
No, who does?
I remember Teddy coming back from practice, and I told him to go half rack.
Yeah,
and he's miserable.
Yeah,
our guest is ready.
He's miserable. I don't get it.
Let's ask
the expert.
Let's get to our friend Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network. Cynthia, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
Hey, good morning. We're just talking quarterbacks to play or not to play. That is the question.
Yeah, Cynthia, I've been, with these rookie quarterbacks, right? I'm just sitting here and I'm like, okay, you've got Caleb Williams, you're the Bears, you got a brand new offense, and you're kind of you're hitting the reset button on the whole offense, and I'm just having a hard time sitting here and being like, hey, I think I would want to get that guy as many game-like reps as possible. And I don't know, how do you feel about especially these rookie guys that don't have that don't have any track record of weighing the experience versus trying to protect the investment?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm more concerned for Caleb Williams about what's going on with the O-line. Darnell Wright was injured in training camp a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
I'm very, very concerned about this O-line, and that to me would probably dictate when I would put Caleb Williams out there, because I want to give him as many game lengths as possible, but I also don't want to get him killed. So there's kind of weighing those things internally, and even if someone's on the field, it doesn't O-line play, meaning it doesn't necessarily mean that they're 100%. So it's a careful kind of math and weighing of whether or not, what's the actual situation that the quarterback is facing versus what they think is best for him.
So Cynthia, do you think about the relationship, which I think is the most important one, that is the least talked about, is the relationship with an offensive coordinator and the quarterback, right? We talk a lot about the quarterback's talents and the offensive line and all these other things, but that tutorial or that symbiotic thing seems to be extremely critical. How about Waldron? I mean, he's only been there since the end of January. How about just that chemistry to see what happens there? Do we trust Waldron's pedigree enough to know that, okay, if he has a good feel for his level of comprehension, the Bears fans should be okay?
Well, there's a couple things, right? Number one, when you're drafted number one overall, there are some expectations, and it's no secret. Like, this isn't Matt Eberflus's first season with the team, so I don't know how long the leash is, right? So there's some things that are not within Shane Waldron's control. However, I've known Shane for many years, and he's a really like a good dude. Part of the reason we don't know a lot about him is because he spends his time coaching and getting to know his players and like doing the actual job, as opposed to doing media. I only know him because I know his wife and his daughter's like an equestrian. It was whatever, really randomly. It's not because he spends his time like doing his job. So I do have a lot of faith in him to be able to get Caleb to where he needs to go. And I agree, the relationships between all of the coaches, I think, the quarterback coach makes a big difference. Just ask CJ Stroud last year. I mean,
good call.
Johnson there with him. Huge deal, right? So I think all of those things matter immensely, and I think you're great to put it out, but you also have to remember that when you have those pressures of, it's not a first-year head coach, it's not, the GM's now and not his first year, but they didn't come in together. There's always politics at play, but I think the more they can calm down and just focus on the football, the better they'll be. Again, with the caveat that the O-line's okay.
Cynthia, let's continue talking about rookie QBs and maybe some politics that might be involved as well. How much do you buy kind of these whispers out of New England that Joe Milton might actually be more likely to get snaps at quarterback than Drake May here in year one?
This year in New England, I just feel like because it's like the vault is finally sort of open, right? Even though Jared Mayo is like the same pedigree as Bill, it's not you're finally like people that feel like, it's like he's had it under such lock and key for so long now, like he's gone, woo, we can say whatever we want. I don't know what I think about any of that. It's possible that they believe that. I've heard a lot of conflicting reports. I think when all is said and done, like it's like Jacoby Brissett, like they've got like some situations there where they have like an opportunity to keep that all in-house a little bit longer, and I think they will take that opportunity.
So let's talk let's stick with this relationship theme here, Cynthia. Would you be more optimistic about Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels, or Kevin O'Connell and JJ McCarthy?
Well, That's a tough one for me because I think that Jaden is the more talented amongst the two players. I really think Kevin has a great understanding of what's working in the current landscape of football. I mean, he comes from the Shanahan McVay tree. So that seems to have, your finger on the pulse of kind of what right now seems to be the most effective offense in football. But I think JJ has more limitations than Jaden does. So, I mean, and Cliff has obviously been maybe the way to look at it is Cliff without the added responsibilities of the defense, maybe that gives him enough time to really focus all his energies on the thing he does best, which is creating this quarterback situation that leverages their talents, their God-given talents. And if that's the case, then then that's wonderful for him. But I love how Kevin teaches the game. I love how, he comes from that tree where they have great decisions. I mean, look at all of the successful, look at who's getting paid right now. They seem to come from those same trees. I mean, Tua just signed a monster contract, and I don't know if, had he played in a different system, Mike McHale's obviously another Shanahan disciple, would he have gotten that massive deal? I don't know.
So I'm just going to run a couple names by it. Brandon Coleman, Nick Allegretti, Tyler Biadasz, Sam Cosme, and Andrew Wiley. That's what Cliff Kingsbury is going to have to deal with. Sam Howell sacked over 60 some odd times a year ago, and I get the mobility. How friendly do you think Kingsbury will have to be with Jaden Daniels' talents to not have that be the overarching question in a very pass rush heavy division?
I think two things. I think the first thing is every single one of these quarterbacks, from Caleb to Bo to every one of the quarterbacks that are even second year quarterbacks, I can say this about, all of their coaches really preach throwing on the run. It's like since Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen got into the league, there are no true pocket passers anymore. And, if you're lucky enough to get a clean pocket, you better throw it well, but that's just rare. So I think the thing you've seen with Cliff is that he's had a lot of these guys with natural talent that doesn't necessarily need the pocket to be perfect. And that is a good fit for Cliff. I'm curious to see, you don't want to get hurt, right? Like Anthony Richardson last year, it gives me a bit of shades of that, right? If he tries to take on too much, it's okay to get rid of the football sometimes, right? You want to be able to recognize things and be smart about it, but also take care of your body. I don't want to see anyone get hurt, but I do think Cliff is very uniquely suited. I mean, when I close my eyes and think about Kyler Murray, I think of that little bootleg. He's runs off to the right and then the left, right? He looks like a video game. And then you think of even Johnny Manziel, if you will, go back and all of the people that Cliff's been around, and these are guys who have extraordinary talent, didn't necessarily have good O-lines, and were able to make the most of what they were given.
We're talking with Cynthia Freeland of the NFL Network. Cynthia, I know we'll stick on the rookie QBs here for a second. I know you were out at Broncos camp recently as well, and they've got another rookie QB. You think it's time for the Bo Nix show in Denver?
Denver's really interesting because their whole team is very young.
Yeah.
So you could say, I mean, not their whole team, but the majority of their team is very young. I think they really, they're a little hamstrung by the contract of that other guy who now plays in Pittsburgh. But ultimately,
don't remind me.
Right. They did something. I think given their constraints, they really did a nice job this offseason, and they're still trying to figure out some of the other holes that they have to fill and how they're going to pay Patrick Surtain, for example. So long story short is I do think it's the Bo Nix show. I don't necessarily think it's week one. I think Sean likes his skill set. I think Sean sees something in Bo that he feels he can work with, and wouldn't all of us like to have a boss that's hey, I believe in you. We're going to give you the best opportunity to succeed. Let's go out there and get it. Let's get you all of your receivers are giant human beings. They selected for large humans. That was their large humans was their whole thing. And now they're even really focused on, getting their running backs jugs machines, right? They want to be able to be versatile. They want to figure out how the O-line can help them out a little bit. I mean, last year their O-line looked disproportionately bad because of the way Russell plays. But But, like a Mike McGlinchey is a much better player than he looked like last year. He just got smoked by how Russell always ran in a specific way that kind of gave a defender a step or two advantage and jump on what he was going to be doing because his patterns were so recognizable.
When it comes to pressure, and I'm more of an Instapot guy myself, Cynthia, but if I was going to be in the pressure cooker, would I rather be Dak with Jerry or Jalen with Nick?
Ooh. I feel like, look, Dak will get his money,
From somebody.
No, he'll get it from Jerry. This is like such a Cowboys playbook thing to have like a late, it's like, I know Dak's participating, but you've seen CD's not, for example, he just got put on the the non-injury list or whatever. But, this is something that they've done. I remember it was Zeke before they signed that massive contract. They'll get it done. It's just a matter of when, and they just, for whatever reason, don't feel like they need the preseason or training camp to do that.
Cynthia, let's talk about quarterback getting paid here for a second. This is an argument that you're kind of hopping into the middle of because DB and I have been going back about this for about 2 weeks now. But I'm curious because we see these huge deals for Jordan Love and Tua, like you mentioned earlier, and Trevor Lawrence, and guys that I don't think most of us would consider in the highest tier of quarterbacks in the league. And if you look at the history of guys that have won Super Bowls, it's either guys that you're playing on or that are playing on the cheap, or the super elite guys, which you really cannot pay enough, right? And so I have a really hard time trying to understand why teams are continually paying guys that I think most of us can look at and be like, yeah, they don't fall in either of those categories. Is it just that with the new, with the salary cap expanding, it's changed the financial model so much that you can pay these kind of second and third tier guys? Is it just that, hey, for some of these teams, being competitive and making the playoffs is the goal more so than the Super Bowl? Or do you think it's that they're trying to talk themselves into the fact that these could be elite guys down the road?
So I'm a former investment banker, so I'll put it in investment banking terms.
I love
They
it.
believe the price today will look like a deal tomorrow.
Okay.
Whether or not it's true, they believe these people, like, the Dolphins, for example, and same thing with the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love, another Shanahan disciple, just putting it on there. But what they think is if they wait, then the price will look, then they'll look like they really didn't do themselves they did themselves a disservice tomorrow. So it's really not even about to me, the psychology is really more about the market than it is about their belief that someone is so good that they need to reset the market. Their belief is if I wait and I see these guys coming out, they're all fearful of what is, you're even hearing it in training camp. What is Brock Purdy going to get paid? Yada, 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 all these things already, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're worried and concerned, and they're thinking about, okay, if I don't pay my guy this year, I'm going to look like a fool when I have to pay him even more next year. That whether or not that's true, that's different. But it's the psychology behind the belief that it's more expensive tomorrow.
Cynthia, a couple of guys needing some bounce back years, but for different reasons. Uniquely or interestingly enough, they're in the same division. More pressure again. Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson?
It's really funny because my gut instinct is to say Lamar because of, the MVP, et cetera, et cetera. But, and then the whole, playoff game, that was a really weird playoff game last year where they didn't leverage any of the things that got them, right? That was a strange playoff game. So maybe that, but I do also have the sense, if we would have backtracked a little bit more after Joe Burrow coming off a Super Bowl, he easily could have won. It just feels different, right? So I would say, I personally think there's probably more pressure on Lamar Jackson, but I would say I think Joe Burrow is probably putting more pressure on himself.
Who would you pay more money to? Jamar Chase or CD Lamb?
Jamar Chase every day. Not even close.
Really? Because of
don't get me wrong, I like CD Lamb quite a bit.
But Jamar gets T. Higgins.
Sure. But here's well, I could argue that CD gets to play in the NFC. Like that's a huge advantage.
Hey, touche.
Because the AFC is significantly harder. I think that the difference for me between the two is the versatility of the route running, the change of speed, the change of direction. CD is really great at like the four things that he does really great. Jamar's been asked to do a lot of different things with different quarterbacks throwing to him, so you've seen him under a lot of different circumstances, and that guy has managed to make it happen and make it look good even when it didn't look good, if you know what I mean. And their O-line was garbage for a long time too. So to me, I'm not saying that CD's not a top 5 guy, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying I think Jamar is probably top 2, 3.
Okay, Cynthia, I know this is not your ranking, so I'm not holding you responsible for this. I know the players did this.
Okay.
But is there even an argument in your mind where you can justify Patrick Mahomes being 4th?
No.
Okay. Because I'm not crazy here, right? Like he's
let alone having another quarterback ahead of it.
Like he's a 1 full stop giant gap and then number 2, right? Like I'm not nuts here.
I believe when it's I hope it's a really long career, but I believe when it's all said and done, he's going to be the best quarterback that we see in our lifetime. Like I don't think we're going to see another guy that's like he's our like one generation had MJ. And then we have LeBron, right? Like and you can argue who's better between the two, but in your lifetime, if you were like peak MJ season, it was MJ. You know what I'm saying? Like that's our version of that.
Hey, bigger impact of a new head coach on a quarterback than Harbaugh and Justin Herbert?
Well, yeah, because Harbaugh's not going to make him throw the ball as much. I mean, he's going to run the air out of the football. Like Justin Herbert is a terrible fantasy okay, that's a terrible, not a terrible one. But if you're expecting him to give you the type of production Josh Allen had 3 years ago, then it's not a good pick because there just aren't going to. I guess it depends if you're scoring too. Okay, I take it back. He's a good fantasy pick, but he's not that premier going to get you all those points in fantasy because they're going to create opportunities for him to have higher probability passes as opposed to just pure volume of passes.
Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network. Cynthia, we appreciate your time as always. Hopefully we will catch up again with you soon.
Appreciate you.
You got it. Thanks. Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
That's Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network. Great stuff from Cynthia as always. Definitely appreciate her joining us.
So the top 3, you think she's going to say Chase, Hill, and Jefferson?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I agree with her on Chase. I'll take Chase over CD.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think
I love CD Lamb.
She put it better than I could, but his ability to do more things at a high level, I think is now you're right. He does have a little bit of help there with T making his life a little bit easier, but Jamar Chase pretty good. He's pretty good.
I don't discount that.
He's pretty good. Coming up next, we've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, and we're brought to you by our friends at the Team Jack Foundation. Make sure you get to teamjackfoundation.org to support this great cause and help them achieve their goal of finding better treatments for childhood brain cancer and one day a cure. You can do that by volunteering, by donating right there on the web page, by seeing what events that you can get involved with. All the information you need is right there at teamjackfoundation.org. Joining us now is Tony Urban from RSM US. He was named their tax leader for 2023. Tony, how are you this morning?
I'm great. How are you all doing?
Good, Tony. Good.
So, Tony, you are part of the group that is sponsoring Youth Day at the Pinnacle Bank Championships. Tell us a little bit about Youth Day and kind of what it means for the tournament.
Yeah, it's I'm on the board for the Pinnacle Bank Championship and been a long-time supporter of the event. And this is our third year of doing sponsoring Youth Day on Saturday. And as part of that, one of our things from an RSM platform, trying to give back to the communities in which we live and work, like most organizations do. And golf is one of our major platforms. And give you a little background, we do a PGA tournament down in Sea Island, Georgia, that we do with the Davis Lowe Foundation. We're on our 15th year there, and we've raised over $42 million for charities with that organization and with that event. And what we tried to do is bring that same type of event to the Corn Ferry Tour and the Pinnacle Bank Championship. And a big part of that is the RSM Putting Challenge that we do on Saturday. It's part of Youth Day, and this is our third year doing it. And, really delighted we're going to close in on $250,000 money that we've raised for local charities over the last 3 years. So really excited for that, and really just trying to bring the youth and enthusiasm, to the tournament. And this is a major platform, not only for the tournament, but also from an RSM standpoint as well.
Tony, such a heart for communities and young people in general. A couple of things you're passionate about that are near and dear to my heart, teammates, obviously, and you've done a lot of work with the SAVE program. What is it about the young people, from your vantage point as such a highly successful person, that it is so inviting for you when you're looking for opportunities to not only bring awareness, but support for young people in particular communities?
Yeah, it's a great question. My wife and I are really, really passionate about youth and really trying to do everything we can, around the community with mentoring. And like you mentioned with teammates and Coach Osborne, I've been on the board for a long time and now the president of that organization. And then you mentioned the SAVE organization with Kevin Melcher.
Yeah, good buddy.
Here, yeah, exactly. Over 10 years ago. So you know him well. And it's it's a big passion of ours. And I'm really delighted. It's fun to do this with the tournament, sponsor Youth Day with RSM, and both teammates and SAVE are a major part of it. Both will have some of our kiddos out participating in the putting challenge, and they each will get $5,000 and they'll get to play for another $15,000. So it's a fun event, and it's another way to give back to the community. And you hit it on the head, though. It's a passion of mine personally, as well as my wife and our family, and we're just really fortunate to be able to give back.
Tony, you mentioned the putting challenge. There's also going to be some local athletes out there at Youth Day. What are some of the highlights of those Youth Day appearances?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, we fell into it on accident. It's a great story. As part of Sea Island, I was down there about a month ago, and we were talking about the event down there, and we always bring PGA Tour players in, and they participate with the charities. And we did the same thing here at the Corn Ferry Tour event. And then last year we had the rain delay, and I was sitting there the night before, and Chris Winlett came up to me, and she's like, "Tony, we have a problem. The event got pushed back. The cut line got pushed back. We don't have any golfers tomorrow." So, plan B got put into place really quick, and we were able to get a bunch of athletes from UNL, Creighton, and UNO. And I'll tell you what, it went off like gangbusters. The kids absolutely love that. And so we're sticking with that this year, and we're going to continue to partner with both UNL, Creighton, and UNO, bringing athletes out, golfers, basketball players. Murkowski, she was out last year. The kids really love that. So it's a great way to get exposure to the event, but bring some excitement for the kids as well.
You picked some personal favorites too. Caitlin Hanna, I work pretty close with Terry, obviously West Side grad. You got Jackson Benj. I'm hoping he gives Gooch a hard time. Both of them, since they're playing, and Drew Christo. It's pretty Juwangi. It's just cool for athletes to want to be a part, but you got quality people too. There probably wasn't a lot of arm twisting when you're passionate about something. People know your background, your credibility when it comes to community involvement, that you get quality people that are on board too.
Yeah, it's right away. I mean, Terry, you mentioned Terry Hanna, a longtime friend of mine as well, and great supporter of the event. But for example, Damon, PGA of Nebraska, the Reach program, they jumped in right away. Buddy Bob Danenauer, known him forever. I know you all
great
know him
family
as well.
friend.
But yes, and so he jumped in right away and said, "Tony, what do you need? We'll help you with everything." And they took this thing. They've got drones flying over, setting up the putting course, and they're all in on this thing. And did the same thing, down at Sea Island as well, helping us organize. And so they've just been a great, not only just the excitement they bring and the outreach that they bring, but just the support. And then just the excitement that they're able to bring to the table as well.
It's funny how human, people that are interested in people being good people surround themselves with people that are good people. Right? You mentioned Bob Danenauer. Middle school football doesn't come back to Omaha Public Schools. Omaha University doesn't do what they do without being other-centered. How important is it for you to just be connected with like-minded visionaries that help pull things like this off?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how life, is full circle with a lot of things. And, from our family, I've got 4 kids that were lucky enough to play through high school. And two that have graduated from college playing baseball and softball at Nebraska and Wichita State. And I've got two more at Simpson, and I bring them up just because of our lives revolve around our children in a lot of ways. So everybody that I mentioned so far, I have met through organizations, through my kids' sports events and things like that. And then it crosses over into the community with Save and teammates. And then it crosses over into RSM and now the Pinnacle Bank Championship. So I always talk to young folks about coming into being a young professional. You know that you're in the right track where your life really ultimately converges, and you don't know if you're getting up going to work or if you're going to have fun or giving back to the community, because it all really kind of meshes into one.
Tony, I'll get you out of here on this. You mentioned kind of in passing you're hoping to hit that $250,000 mark. I've already raised $150,000 year to date. How do you decide which community organizations you focus on with that charitable donations?
Well, it gets back to picking up the phone year one. It was pretty easy to say, hey, we got this event going on. And it was really by word of mouth that first year that we raised the 75, and we had a lot of repeat charities coming back. We were able to add to that to the 15. So it's really just phone calls. And I'll tell you, we don't get people don't say no in Omaha, and we're pretty fortunate from that perspective. Yeah. And it's now it's a matter of which 15 do we want to have, right? And that we want to support, that are aligned to our mission with RSM and the tournament itself. So we're really, really happy that out of that 90,000 this year, 5,000 will go to 15 local charities, and then all 15 will play for another 15,000. So that's really how the process works in identifying the charities.
Everything that everybody says you are, Tony, and it was a joy to watch your kiddos too, man. I appreciate what you do in the city. As you know, I'm a huge fan of Omaha as well.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate all the support. I just walked down to 17 and saw you all over the place. So we can't thank you all enough for the support for the tournament.
Appreciate it, Tony. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, take care, guys.
Thanks, Tony.
That's Tony Urban from RSM. They're sponsoring Youth Day on Saturday at the Pinnacle Bank Championship. As he mentioned, you can find Hurrdat down at hole 17.
I'd like to see Caitlin and Jackson get involved.
Get after a little bit.
Yeah, she is sweet swinging. Has been her whole life, and I'm guessing Jackson's going to give it to Gooch a little bit too out there when he sees him well represented. It's pretty cool, a little father son with a U.S. amateur champ. And Pops, right? It's
you got both sons and Pops out there. That'll be probably, I'm guessing, the highlight of the tournament this year.
Yeah, I can't imagine being better at my son than anything, given the father-son with Gucheski.
Yeah.
But golf would allow you to give yourself a chance, right?
Oh, yeah. You can hang on a little longer.
Yeah. I don't want to see Caleb in any parts of anything.
Not trying to have him have a run fit on you?
No, I'm good.
Coming downhill with some bad intentions.
I'm good. Much rather watch Gooch out drive his dad by about 30 yards.
Some other local athletes that'll be out there at Youth Day, Juwan Gary and Bryce Williams from Nebraska ball will also be out there as some of the headliners. You mentioned Drew Christo as well. It'll be a great group out there, so make sure.
Who can swing it?
Drew?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of baseball players are good golfers. Yeah. There's a lot, which is funny because the swings do not translate at all.
Well, you wouldn't think. Remember when I was first trying to get started, you'll pick it up, man. You play baseball.
No, sir.
Yeah,
very different.
That's not true.
Very different swing. We will wrap up the show coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
I feel like Isaac Gifford, like he's a big ball guy, you know. He knows football. He's like one of the coaches to us, you know. If we have questions, we can come to him. So I feel like having him in our room, that's a big piece in us. You know, he's a veteran guy on his team. So having him there with us, being able to ask him questions, I feel like that's big for us, not having just to go to the coach, you know, because most players don't like to go to the coaches. They want a player that they know who has experience, you know, to be able to talk to us. So Isaac Gifford, like he's big for us.
Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln, and we're brought to you by our friends at Union Omaha. Make sure you get to unionomaha.com to get tickets for their upcoming match against the Bellevue University Bruins. It's a friendly. In other sports, we call that an exhibition, but because of that, they've got some really cool stuff they've got for you that they're not on. They've got a little more leeway to have a more interactive experience for you on August 21st at 6:30 p.m. at Warner Park. There's going to be autograph signings, free raffle entries for all fans, exclusive team experience packages, and even some fan matches at half. Make sure you get to unionomaha.com to check out all that information, as well as get tickets to that friendly on August 21st against Bellevue University. DB.
Ravi.
What's up? There's a question.
Just listening to you read.
There's a question that we've been asking some of our guests here that I would like you to address, because you said you had an idea the first time that I asked it, and it's the non-newcomer question.
Mm-hmm.
What non-newcomer for Nebraska?
John Bullock.
John Bullock? That's your guy?
It's my guy.
Care to expand?
Well, I did yesterday a little bit, right? I mean, a guy that I think is a really good athlete, has tremendous command, was young in the defensive concepts and the position move from a year ago that I think can function at a high level.
Position of need this year.
Oh, 100%. I mean, between Bullock and Javen Wright and Shavers Jr. and some of these young guys, I think it's critical. You know, Bear, like those are the 4. I kind of as I think of it, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, they talked about it a little bit yesterday.
I mean, those are the guys that have a chance to really flourish. And for me, I like Bullock's competitiveness. I like the fact that he's got a high football IQ. I think he's not afraid of young guys growing in the position, so he'll help raise up guys like Shavers Jr., who I think is a tremendous physical talent. You know, still getting acclimated to the tempo of the college game, but has a lot of those already. He's got a lot of those it things. So for me, it's Bullock.
Is there?
So I mean, there's lots, but I'd start with him.
So there, you mentioned something there with Bullock that I think we've seen a theme, at least, you know, when we were at Big Ten Media Days. Ben Scott kind of talked about this, and Ty Robinson kind of talked about this, and as Isaac Gifford kind of talked about this. You mentioned like bringing up young guys along with them, right?
It's a must if you're a development program.
Well, and you've talked about this before, but like, are you surprised at all how quickly they've gotten to the point where they're not threatened by other people?
A little bit,
right?
I am, because you're not. It's easier, not easy. It's easier when you've had a lot of success.
Yeah.
Right. It's
because you're like, oh, this works.
It's easier to give away money if you have it.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I am pleasantly surprised by a team that hasn't had a ton of personal success and individual success, that they're so willing to have other people come up behind them, because it's not natural.
No.
You know, a lot of people are good after they've gotten theirs.
It's like, oh, now I'll be helpful.
A lot of people aren't as good when they're trying to get theirs.
Like if we were talking about guys that had been named first team All Big Ten.
Yeah.
It's really easy to be secure.
It's easier for Calvin to invest in me because he knows he's getting ready to go to the league.
Yeah.
Right. It's easy.
And he knows his spot's not in jeopardy.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not as hard for, you know, John Hess and Jay Foreman, or, you know, Jamel Williams and Terrell Farley, like, or
it's harder for you to want to invest in an Amon Green.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
Because of the
yeah. And early on we didn't.
Yeah.
You know, we had to learn. You had to learn to. And I think in looking back at it, I think that was some of the. I mean, it's not like it's not guilt, but I think Amon's transition, because he did have a good freshman year. It would have been a lot easier in fall camp and in the summer if we just were better teammates.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it was some tough sledding early on for him, and we didn't help matters any. So, you know, but the next year it's just easier.
Yeah.
So I am pleasantly surprised, and that's just a good, strong culture, because it must single you out. Like
if you're not like that,
being
you're
selfish and not other centered must reveal itself fairly easily.
Yeah.
In their day to day.
You think this might be too strong. You think it's like lonely to be selfish on that team?
I would imagine so, because it got like that. I've said this before. Like if you wanted to bitch and moan or complain or whisper, and you'd find yourself only having a handful of people to talk to, and those usually weren't people that could affect the outcome.
Or that
like it became so like, who were you going to complain to? I mean, what was Clinton going to say to me that I wasn't going through?
Yeah.
Right. Like that circle shrinks tremendously. So you learn to adapt and adjust and basically survive.
And probably not the circle you want to be associated with.
Yeah.
The most.
What was Brooke going to say? What was Brooke going to say to Terman?
Yeah. Right.
It's just how it goes.
I do find that dynamic really interesting, because I kind of thought about it from a team success level rather than an individual success. It's like, yeah, if you have the proof of concept, like let's say they win 8 games last year, a few of those switch the other way on the one possession. They end up winning 8 games. It's a lot easier to be like, see, this works. Yeah. I hadn't really thought about it from the individual standpoint where it's like, hey, if I'm secure in my spot, it's like, yeah, I can bring little brother along.
Yeah.
I can bring little brother.
Kind of like Hartzog and Caleb.
Yeah, right? It's like, the Hartzog probably not threatened by Caleb at this point, right? But, Caleb can sit there and be competitive with other freshmen.
Gifford can invest in Brett's, right?
Yes.
A couple rovers.
Because Gifford's like, hey, I'm the guy here. But if you're, I don't know, let's say you are John Bullock.
Let's say you're Javen Wright.
Yeah.
Like you've waited your whole career so far to be healthy and right?
You've been patient. You put in the work.
You've gone through some rehab stints yourself. You've never been healthy.
This is not great on me, but like I've done that when I was doing fill-in stuff, right? When I was just filling in on radio, you know how likely I was to like try and mentor somebody else that was trying to do the same thing I was trying to do?
Yeah, you were Brett Favre, right?
0% chance.
Aaron Rodgers.
Not helping you out.
Aaron Rodgers.
Like this is a zero-sum game. There's only so many spots here.
Yeah.
And I'm not like if me and like I'm not proud of this, right? It's a crappy thing to do.
And I think sometimes it's just on accident too, right? Because you're not threatened by me, but I'm like, hey, let's do some reads. Like let's split. I don't want as much pressure on you. There's this OCD controlling thing in you that I'm like, hey, give some of those up. Like that's what I'm getting ready to say, but I haven't, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just I get it. Like there's just this natural. Put it to you this way: when you see it with Nebraska and their young guys, I'm impressed. I am. You know how easy it would be for Bullock to feel threatened by Shavers?
Yeah, I would feel threatened by Shavers. He's a physical freak.
Yeah, he's gonna be really good.
Yeah, he's gonna be really, really good sooner rather than later, most likely. And he's gotten publicly praised by the head coach.
Right, but if you're Ty Robinson and you can sing Van Poppel's praises or
you're Ben Scott, you can sing Justin Evans' praises.
Yeah,
who was breathing down your neck when you got here last year.
When you first got,
and there was no guarantee you were going to win that one.
Or I can see Emmett Johnson and Ramir like chumming up together.
Yeah,
like that's pretty cool. Kalen, right? When I saw him at state playoffs, state basketball with Dylan, I'm like, that let me know early on they're getting the mentality in those rooms right.
Yeah,
because it's not easy to do. I don't care who you are.
No, I mean you could be an adult. It's certainly not hard to do when you're 18 to 23 years old.
Yeah, not if you want to get yours.
No, and let's be honest here. Everybody to a certain degree wants to get theirs. Like you don't go play.
And if you're just happy to be there, at some point that manifests itself, and you know you got the wrong guy.
Yeah, if you're just happy to be there, you're not even in this discussion.
Yeah,
like we're not even having this conversation. Yeah. There is a certain amount of, selfishness is probably too strong, but self-interest.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's like, hey, yeah, I want us to be good. I also want to go play in the NFL.
Yep.
Right. Really hard to do that if I'm not on the field.
And what was your you asked Ty an interesting question. It had something to do with his reps. And remember, he said, well, it's a long season. You're going to need everybody.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I asked him.
He was just real casual about not like sharing.
Yeah, well, because I asked him because he brought up Van Poppel, and I go, is it? I think I asked something to the effect of like, is it hard to invest in somebody that might be taking your reps?
Yeah,
and he's like, nah, I don't need all those. Basically, he's like, it's a long year. I'm not trying to play all of them.
Well, it's just,
and it was so casual.
Yeah,
it was so he didn't like. It didn't seem like he had to like, okay, what's my stock answer that I'm supposed to give when I talk about being a good teammate? He was just like, I'm not playing all those snaps.
Yeah. I just thought it was like
it was I had forgotten about that.
It's a fine line between non-competitiveness.
Yeah, it's hard to stay competitive
and being other-centered
and being a good teammate.
But part of the competitiveness too is you challenge yourself. Can I love on this dude and still keep distance?
Yeah,
like that becomes a competition because you have to understand this guy's nipping at my heels.
Yeah,
I don't want to be selfish, so I better get my ass in gear.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We will be back tomorrow for more Hurrdat Sports Radio.
See you. Have a good day. Love you.